Welcome again to Indiepocalypse Radio, your, the show that is halfway between a con hangout, more literally this time than any other time before, and an interview show. I'm Andrew, the aforementioned host of the aforementioned Indiepocalypse Radio, also the kind of hangout companion to Indiepocalypse, the monthly anthology of alternative games. And speaking of that monthly anthology of alternative games, we have a developer who was in one of them some 20 months ago, almost at this point, with Coda. It's Finn Deavy. Finn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be here. I've never done a podcast before, so apologies if
No,
for whatever happens.
that is like I would say probably 95 to 95 plus percent of the people who are probably on this show. It is, game industry. It's not an industry of podcasts and hangouts, that kind of thing. But
No, no.
I like to hang out with people, and this is my version of it as someone who doesn't want to really be online and have to like comment on posts, like to be always on. Like, it seems exhausting for me. So this is my version of it.
Yeah.
Inventing an entire radio show, because if you ask people to jump on a random voice call with some strangers for hours, they'll be like, no. But if you call it a radio show suddenly and give it like the lightest amount of structure, people go, huh, yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, then people want to show up, right? I mean,
Right.
it's a lot better than having to like go on Twitter and like post every 5 minutes to like keep people engaged. Like that sucks.
Yes. Yeah, no,
Like,
I've increased. I think I've said on the show a couple of times, but like social media is like the equivalent of like, how a friend or like someone you're talking to will occasionally like just be kind of casually talking about something because they want you to ask them about it.
uh,
It's like that's like the only way to interact online, and how most social media sites are built, and it's just everybody's doing that.
oh yeah, and then it like breeds this sort of like hyper confrontational thing where you have like people subtweeting each other.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I was never around for it, but I really like the idea of like the internet just being a bunch of people's like websites and like forums and stuff. Like,
Yes.
I think the moment that it became this sort of like mass centralized thing, like on, like four or five big social media sites, I think like I don't know. I think it took a really like sort of, I guess, downturn.
Yeah. It just like it just doesn't make sense, like as a social platform. Like I think they work as like billboards and bulletin boards for like sharing stuff to some degree, but it just like doesn't make sense.
No, no, and there's like no level of customization, and it's all owned by like three guys.
Right, right. Your
Like
your
it's terrible.
your customization is you have to like use it a lot, basically. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, like you can change the background or whatever.
right.
I think too, like, I don't know. The more that I learn about tech, the more that I really have been on like the open source train.
Yeah.
Like, especially with the way the world's going, like with like, power centralizing or whatever. I and whatnot. And
Yeah.
like these few companies have so much control over like the internet and just like media at large. I think that like sort of like open source and like more decentralized projects are going to be like super important.
Yeah. I even with open source projects, I'm constantly thinking like I don't know how I've told GIMP for probably years I don't need to update this. The software works. Like there's like it's also the weirdness of software that just like always needs to like update, and like for something that like often it does, like imagine like you're halfway through using a pencil and it's like, no, here I made a new pencil, it's slightly better grip or something. It's like this works. Like it's
Yeah, like I mean, apart from like security,
yeah.
like Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the bad part about like more like closed sourced corporate stuff too, is like you have the choice whether you want to update it or not.
Right.
Like the fact that like it's just sort of this black box that you put on your computer, and then they can sort of just change the internal workings. Like the company can change the internal workings whenever they want. Like
Right.
the whole like Unity thing that went down. Like after that, I mean I had already messed with Godot a lot,
Yeah.
but that made me switch all my stuff to Godot pretty quick because I was like, I
Right.
don't want to have all my shit revoked or like have to start paying for like royalties or whatever.
Yeah, and it really kind of like made a lot of companies like realize it to some degree of like, oh, you can be like hobby grade, like make a hobbyist engine, and that's fine. like, uh, like I feel like a lot of engines, like in response to that, for like good press, were like, well, we're not doing that. Like I was gonna switch from, fearing the similar path with like using Game Maker. I was like, oh, maybe I should learn Godot, and then Game Maker was like, oh, actually, we're they kind of backpedaled on all the subscription and all this like, and made it more friendly, like with their free versions and everything, and basically made better like hobby grade kind of uh uh what you call it, engines and software, because it's like that works. like don't fight with what
Yeah, I
works,
mean there's like a giant market for it too, right? Like
Yeah.
I think is like CS is or computer science is like getting more and more important and more people are interested in it and it's getting more democratized. Like you no longer need to like even on Steam like there's no more Steam Greenlight. You just pay $100 and you're on there.
Right.
Like I think as this gets more democratized, like if companies are smart, I think they will like start to open up more. Um, you
Yeah.
know. And I think too, much like with Blender, where like Blender is now just sort of becoming the standard for 3D animation, when it was like, you know, 30 years ago, you had to buy like a Silicon Graphics like workstation or whatever, and like all their software and whatnot. Like now you just have Blender and you just put it on your laptop and it works and it's open source and just funded through donations. Like I think the day that we get to that with Godot, where it just becomes like an industry standard, I think would be pretty cool. Or like
Yeah. Absolutely,
like
it
open
is.
source project.
I'm getting phones. Speaking of games, I mentioned it at the top, but if people are unfamiliar, no, even before that, I have a question before that, asking you to remember 20 months ago, give or take. Uh, how did you find Indiepocalypse?
I had known about Indiepocalypse for like quite a while. Like I used to be when I was like in high school like super big on like itch.io web games and stuff.
Yes.
And I think that I saw it on like itch.io like I don't want to like maybe on like their front page or whatever and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" Cuz like you always have like people do like the really cool like cover art.
Yeah.
And I saw like the really cool cover and I was like, "Oh, this is like super cool." Like a video game like anthology type thing just seems super interesting. So I just like had that bookmarked in my mind. And I had like Coda like sort of on the back burner throughout all of like late high school. I'm
Right.
in university now. Or I finished it up right when I got to university. Um and I remembered it and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna put this game out on Steam, like first like we'll call it like commercial game or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, I should sort of put it in and see if it can get put into Indiepocalypse because I think that'd be cool. And I think what y'all do is like sick. So
Thank you. No,
that's
that
that's
is
kind of how I figured it out.
that is. I mean, that's that. I mean, the purpose of that question is often to make sure that I can continue to have people come into it, but like the frequency of, well, partially because it's so old at this point, um, weirdly to think about. But people are like, oh no, it's just a thing that I was background aware about, and then I was making games and I finished games and I was like, what if I submit my game? But also like, everything is cyclical. People talking about playing itch in the same way, whatever, 20 years ago, I was sitting in the basement playing Newgrounds. Um,
Yeah.
I was just playing like weird free games and then making your own weird games from that. Like there
That's
was,
that's always I'm like so envious of like the Flash days
yeah,
or like like I mean because I've put stuff up on Newgrounds and it's cool that it's still like around, but I
yeah,
think that like I think that like I guess like the indie game sphere just kind of like replaced the whole like Flash thing, but I
Yeah.
do think that was super cool, and I like too that like how accessible web games were. Like
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like we got that a little bit with like all the .io like online games, but I feel like I guess like web games. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. They're super cool. Like
Yeah.
they've always been.
There is some of it like coming back as engines become more like lightweight and allow and computers get stronger, you can publish more stuff just to like run in browser, and then things like Unity, of course, will change their mind, and then a bunch of old Unity web games no longer work. Uh, but it is like it's like the thing about um, I would say Newgrounds and a lot of Flash games versus, I mean, it existed to some degree versus what you think of as like the indie game sphere is that like it's business, like
Yeah.
the commercial aspect of indie games kind of like dwarfed the idea of independent artists making games.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So
Like
it
I mean the amount of like I don't know, and this I think it's like a sign. It's a good thing that people are interested in like indie game development.
right.
I think it's a good thing. But like whenever I see like those YouTube videos that are like, I made an indie game in 24 hours, like just using like a racing wheel plugged into my computer or
Right.
whatever, or like to the point where like they almost like downplay sort of the difficulty and challenge, and like
Yeah.
they make it just seem like a get rich quick scheme. I'm like, I don't want like indie games to become like Bitcoin or like an AI startup or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's all that hustle culture kind of like grind set stuff of like this is how I made, the important thing always with those kind of like videos and things is like if they could make a lot of money off of doing it, they wouldn't make videos telling you how to do it. They would just do it. Uh,
oh yeah, and I
yeah.
think too it's just like so much like the spectacle because like those videos like always are fun to watch, like the
Yeah.
like weird like challenges or whatever. But for some reason it leaves a bad taste in my mouth because like I always feel like video games have gotten a bad rap as being like a children's toy or whatever when
Yeah.
objectively like video games and video game development are it's like super technical and difficult and takes like a lot of like artistry and whatnot.
Right.
um and I think that it almost like re-infantilizes like game developers a little bit, and it's like, oh yeah, like now it's just like a funny YouTube challenge or whatever.
Right, right. Yeah, they I mean so much of this is churn of people out of the industry, so much of it is like in never escaping the consumerist space, but like, I feel like games just don't have that kind of like strong blockade of like an arts, you know, to be like, oh yeah, no, here like I think about constantly if like if you're gonna look into like art house games, like where do you go to find them? What is like I'm just a random guy who doesn't know. Where do I go to like start to get into that?
Yeah,
And it's
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 hard too
like
because
sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you're good, you can go.
No, I was saying partially like, and what is like the art game canon, and that kind of, I think a lot about, me being in high school and like, okay, well, how do I get out of just this stuff that is like what you hear on the radio, like how do I start getting into other
Mhm.
things? And I'm still not sure how like someone was just like didn't have a bunch of time to peruse itch constantly, like how they would do that with games.
Yeah, like I think part of it is like the fact that video game development is such a like digital thing, and
Yeah,
like you can't it's not like in my like town, like in my college town, like there's like a local like punk like music scene, right? And
yeah,
there's like all these artists, and you go to the shows, you pay $10, and you sit in someone's basement and listen to it. And with video games, like since you can't really do it live,
yeah,
and like it's hard to do like even like an art gallery, like I totally agree where it's like, okay, you can't really form like a local scene, which is how I feel like a lot of like underground art gets passed around. So like,
yeah.
how do we do this over the internet? Also, while like Steam is burying anything that isn't like hyper marketable or like already pretty successful,
Right, right.
it
Like
is it is a difficult thing to do, and I genuinely don't know. Like,
yes,
I mean, I think like I don't know.
I've been doing it for 5 years and I haven't found anything remotely close to a good answer yet. Uh, you know, like attempting to
Yeah.
do that. But speaking of these games, I mean, a great thing to do is to talk about them. Um, and so, like Coda, for instance, if people hadn't heard about, don't know what Coda is, how would you describe it?
I would well I okay, how would I describe it?
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's like five like short like first person vignettes, like little like stories we'll call them.
yeah,
Just sort of thrown into like a little art museum. Um and I think I mean I someone one time like called it like poetry in video game form, and I think that's probably like the best way to like not to sound pretentious, but that's
Oh no, I
probably
think
the
there's
best way
plenty
to
of.
put it in the sense much more in the sense that I'm like throwing at the wall shit at the wall to see
Yeah,
what would stick. Like it very much was like, okay, like I just like have been working on this like on these like weird little like mini game things
yeah,
like on and off for a long time, and I need to like wrap them up into something and put them out and like kind of give it a cohesive theme. So I
yeah.
guess I would just call it like a bunch of little vignettes.
Right, right. Now you're running into the problem that I have constantly at events, where people are like, "What is this game?" I go, you know. And your game is ostensibly something with more like gameplay and that is easier to describe, uh,
Yeah.
within systems. But there is like so frequently, that it's not like the language doesn't exist for games, but like the language doesn't exist like within games that is like familiar
Yeah.
in the way that you can like use it to describe things. Um, a little secret thing for the chat that I posted in there for you, um, that I occasionally they
Oh,
later
sorry.
quote they made a quote where they got your name right. um, they're like, "Oops, I spelled that
Oh my
name
god,
wrong,"
that's funny. That's
but
so funny. That's fucking sick.
yeah, and
Oh my
that
god.
is like for people who don't see. Part of I usually I have a Psalms promise that while I do name search Indiepocalypse occasionally, I will never reply to
Mm.
people. That's so people are safe to do it. But I found a post Magfest, um, of someone being like, I found these sick avant-garde games by this developer or misspelt as Finn Evie, but
Yeah.
eventually corrected in a quote tweet to quote post to be Finn Devi. They got your name correct eventually, but it was like, and this is like Magfest is like, it's a cool event, but also you look at it, it's like all the iconography is like Sonic the Hedgehog, um,
Yeah.
and it is like super like video gamey, but then you get someone who's like, yeah, I bought this weird avant-garde shit at a booth at Magfest and it rules.
That's
Uh,
awesome. No, that's so sick that they did that. I like that they put a screenshot of Aleph too, Aleph as well,
yeah,
because I didn't realize this. I kind of like a month before it came out, like had a bit of like a crisis with it,
yeah.
and like I accidentally gave it the graphics of like the Virtual Boy.
Oh,
I accidentally made it all black and red because I originally had like a totally different art style and I switched it,
yeah,
and like I was like, oh, like I kind of want to keep like the black, like red and white theme, but I don't want to make the exact same like looking shader.
yeah,
So now like I have like like 1/10 of the people that play it say that it like gives them a headache, which I just think is like great.
yeah. I mean, sometimes like that's is the weirdness of like that kind of thing will like, uh, it's like the how do you say it's just like no way to say politely. Like, sometimes not everything is for everybody, and you're like, this is the thing I wanted to make. Sometimes people just cannot uh, enjoy it. Like that is the weird thing sometimes that like you would run into like on the internet. It's like one of the weirdnesses of the internet of like like, well, why should you make this for everybody? It's like it's the kind of like it comes from that need to experience everything and be part of every conversation. When like
Yeah. Yeah,
sometimes,
it's like sometimes I don't know. Sometimes it's cooler to just find something that's super like a piece of art that's so niche that like only I don't want to say only you would get it, but like
right,
I think like the idea that like games or art in general have to be like mass marketable and always appeal to everyone always is
right,
like probably yeah it's not a great thing.
no,
Like
no.
I think that I think the ability to not I don't mean isolate in a bad way, but genuinely like isolate some level of your audience is actually like kind of a
Yeah,
good thing,
right.
you know?
It's good to have like I say think it's like think about your friend group. You don't all like all the same things probably, right?
Yeah.
And that's like it's the weird social pressure to have everyone like the same thing, I guess, or it's
Yeah, like the oh my God, like this reminds me of like do you know what like a topster is?
yeah, it sounds familiar.
Like it's like the music charts where people list out their favorite albums or
Okay,
whatever. And
okay,
like I this is like a really weird rabbit hole. So like
yes,
I'm so sorry, but like there's like r/topsters, and it's everybody posting their favorite music. But
yeah,
like I genuinely I swear to God, like there's always like the same like 10 or whatever albums on there,
right,
and like it's a bunch of people all agreeing that like oh yeah like these top like whatever they're like all like super popular stuff, which is
right,
like
right,
fine like you know, but like like Nutrimilk Hotel Kendrick Lamar or whatever. Like I
yes,
love all those, but like it's like the same people and they're all like, "Oh yeah, this is really good. This is really good." It's like a total echo chamber and I'm like, all the topsters that ever get posted with stuff that I've never heard before or that's like super out there or
yeah,
just isn't like what people usually listen to don't get any upvotes. So I think that like like the internet has this like very magnifying effect on like certain pieces of art, you
right,
know.
right, and it's like, but also that's the fun thing about like music. I think music is partially because it's so easy to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take very long, but it's like you say like Kendrick Lamar is very top level. He's like he plays the Super Bowl, and then you're like, but you ask an average person like the in the airplane over the sea, they're like, what is that now? And like,
Oh, that is true. Yeah,
and it's
it
like
definitely
weird.
is like
It's
an.
like super weird and abrasive, in some ways.
Mhm.
But it's also like easy to listen to enough, and then you can just like keep going weirder and more like obtuse, um, and just like there's the also like the pride almost in being obtuse, and like
Oh yeah, I mean
and
that's totally a thing as well for sure.
but it's like like this buddy here like it's fun to see. Also, I'm scrolling through that and seeing a lot of the uh you know repeats and very like I'm like what are people's these things, and there's like more of like you know here's my favorite best narrative favorite cover you don't enjoy but most do, which is also like the best thing to have on the internet, to have a contrary opinion.
Yeah, it is funny too, like the because I'm guilty of this myself.
Yeah.
Like I like cataloging art. I don't know. I think it like makes my brain feel good. But
Yeah.
like it is very interesting to see like how the internet really enjoys to like catalog art and like sort of the way that they go about it. Like you
Yes.
sort of said about like a lot of like mainstream social media, like it feels like people sort of like kind of begging the question about themselves and like
Yes.
people are so desperate for interaction on the internet they're like okay I'm going to put out like my opinion in hopes that someone will disagree or will agree but I just want some sort of interaction to people for people to like see that I'm a person, right?
Yes. There is I don't have a word or an easy way to concisely say this, but I've been thinking more about like the way of like having an opinion that is intended to be seen by somebody else, you know. Like it's to the point where sometimes it may be genuine, but it feels like you said, like you're saying it because you want somebody else to interact with it. Um, and often like it doesn't really
Yeah.
say anything really about how your experience with something. It's kind of like, oh, this I think this thing's going to be huge, or this is a letdown, or kind of like framing your opinions in terms of like not what you think about something necessarily, but you know how other people feel about it.
Yeah, and it's like I think too it's like oftentimes because of like internet culture with memes and stuff people will be like they'll sort of reduce things down to one note, right?
Right.
Like I guess I could sort of put this more with music just because I feel like there's a bigger culture around it, but with like video games it's like I don't know like, oh, Cruelty Squad, like,
Yeah.
okay, that's like the funny haha like crazy like FPS. Okay, like the Stanley Parable, that's like a like that's a sort of like self-referential thing. I don't know. I guess like I'm finding it hard to like sort of find examples, I guess, in video games, but like
Right.
I feel like especially with music, things get boiled down to like one note. Like Blonde by Frank Ocean. Oh, that's like a sad album or whatever.
Yes.
Like
Right.
I don't know. That like every time that I notice it, it kind of makes me cringe, but then I realize that I do it myself. Where like I don't know. I feel like especially on the internet, it's very easy to boil art down to just like one note.
Right.
Um,
Right. And especially like coming from a certain person or like a certain style, you use like, oh yeah, that's the thing I'm familiar. I know what that is. I get what that style is. Oh, these are all the same. That's by I'm thinking right before the show. I've got a fresh stack from the Criterion sale, and I had watched probably the first time since around when it came out, Grand Budapest Hotel, and
mhm.
and it is also like that is like indifferent, and that's someone else who's easy to paint with like that kind of like broad brush of like, oh, a little quirky or whatever. um,
Yeah. Like the whole like Wes Anderson, dude.
yeah,
Okay, this pissed me off. Like the Wes Anderson AI shit, where like
yes,
they would take a picture and be like, "Oh, Wes Andersonify." Like, listen, like whatever people think about Wes Anderson, like the fact that they're taking somebody's artistic output, feeding it through a machine, and then like taking a picture of like their fucking Cheerios in the morning is like awful.
yes, and it's like it is one of the beautiful examples of like people not understanding what makes someone's aesthetic. It is like
Mhm.
they're like old wood paneling, I guess. Um, but I mean, it's also that's someone who's hard to define because so much of that is like good actors being able to deliver that weirdness. You know.
That's true, yeah. And it's like the like sort of like you like the dialogue and stuff with like Wes Anderson
Yeah.
and like I mean it's just like that is something that like I wouldn't know how to look more into it or like even how to define the terminology of it, but the way that like the internet, especially after like this whole AI hype craze is like boiling down like artistic movements and
Yeah.
like and whatnot and like artists and creators into like just sort of like one note, like one thing. Like I don't even know how to approach the problem, or even if there is a way to make it better. But like,
Yeah.
because I feel like on some level this has always been a thing. Like I think about like like Yume Nikki and
Yeah.
like all the like Yume Nikki likes and stuff, and like how that turned into its own little scene. Like I think that's like a positive example of it. Of like, okay, a lot of people really related to this artist, so they made art like it. But we kind of have like the inverse with like the AI stuff where it's like, okay, we're gonna take all of this person's artistic output and like crush it down into one thing instead of
Right.
like
Right.
building on top.
Because a lot of most of the stuff I've seen like post Yuminiki like inspired by it is like very much somebody bringing their own ideas to this aesthetic, and like I think you see this problem I think a lot in games as mechanics get stripped from their context and like resupplanted into something that has no personality. It would be like, I mean, the Yume Nikki equivalent, if it ever was recognized by broader gaming culture. Uh, and it was like, it became like the big thing, would be like, you'd have a bunch of like wandering from room to room games, I guess. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, it's just like the most like boiled down version of all these things that just doesn't mean anything anymore.
It's like after Goat Simulator came out or whatever in like the
Yeah.
early 2010s, and then there was like Snake Simulator and like whatever that became the new thing, and like the new spam on Steam was everybody just making like simulators of
Yeah.
like random animals and shit, right?
Right. And it's like, why are you making this? Like that's I mean, the thing about a lot of those is like, and this is true of like imitations and also rans in every art form, is like, if this thing wasn't popular, you would have never have made this thing, and it doesn't feel inspired by it in any way. It just feels like you are, Ghost Simulator is popular. Let's see what I can crank out fast enough um, to catch on with it.
Yeah, because like
Like
I don't think there's even a problem with Like if you want to like take heavy inspiration from someone, I think that's
Yeah.
great. But I think like especially with the way the attention economy works on the internet, like so many times I guess I see it a lot both ways, but like there's so many times like one thing will get popular and it just like takes over.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a virus, and it's not like there's no conversation being had. Like I feel like with the like Yume Nikki example,
Yeah.
or with Flash games, but like with Yume Nikki especially, like there was an interesting conversation going on there where like a lot of people were using it to like explore, like using games to explore their own psyche, or like
Yeah.
using those like Yume Nikki like and explore their like whatever ideas they had. And there was like a conversation there where people would make these like RPG Maker games and they would play each other's, and it was like this whole little like community that formed around it. But then
Yeah.
you go on like Steam or whatever nowadays, and there's like the banana game or like the whatever game, like I forget what it was called, but it would like I think it was like a scam to like farm like Steam cards, like trading cards or whatever. But
Sure.
they had the game that was like just called Banana, and like then there became like 500 games that were just named like one word, and it would just pop up with a picture of like that thing and then like give you a bunch of like Steam trading cards.
Right. And like it's I mean, you mean Nikki's the perfect example where not only like are these developers like in conversation with each other, but like, the game is in conversation with like their games are in conversation with Yuve Nikki, and like other like like RPG Maker game. Like I have I have a catalog that I use for events, and RPG Maker is a category it's a tag separate from RPG. Uh,
Yeah,
the non RPG Maker game. It just becomes like
which
a
I like. I adore that genre so
yeah.
much.
It's become like its own like forum because it was like an easy pre Twine even it was like an easy engine to like just tell a story in that was like cheap or free sometimes, and it's like, oh, I can just make a thing that tells stories. uh
And I love the idea too of like a game that's so comfortable with itself that, and this is not to bash like gameplay
yeah.
or the idea of like making good gameplay or whatever, because that's like an art in and of itself. Um, or like but I think like the sort of confidence that Yume Nikki had to strip back all the mechanics and sort of focus on the elements of video games that I think often get ignored.
Right.
I thought was great, like setting a tone, like sort of just building out a theme, even like visuals and sound and whatnot. Like I feel like so often games are purely defined by how you interact with them, because that's like in a lot of ways the unique element to video games as an art
Right.
form. That like all of that other stuff gets pushed to the wayside, right? Like it
Yeah.
and I mean especially in like popular gaming culture, right? Like
Right. Right.
especially everything feels very like sort of, I guess the term would be like kinesthetically like very like pleasing.
Yes.
And I think the fact that like Yume Nikki was bold enough to sort of look at video games and I guess games like Moon Remix RPG as well,
Yeah.
where they were like bold enough to sort of look at video games and say like, okay, this is just as interesting as like a narrative like storytelling device and a vehicle to division and to like to show art as it is to like sort of give you that like dopamine hit when you like get a headshot on CS:GO or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like why 2025 we're still talking about it, and people are like
Yeah.
still playing it and making games inspired by it. It has kind of like a lasting impact because it's like distinct. It is. It has this
Yeah.
very and it's not, but also it's like because doesn't have like gameplay, so to speak. It's not so easily replicatable, like on the shallow end. How many 8 million Vampire Survivor likes are there out there? You
Yeah. I mean, like, if you know about like the Yume Nikki like remake as well that they did, where it was like
yes,
in 3D.
yeah,
Like that is such an odd thing, because I
right,
guess I know they got Kikiyama's like approval with it, but that is like sort of, I feel like the marketable, like they were trying to make it like a game when it just wasn't, and it's
right,
just such a like I kind of love it because of how odd it is. Like Yume Nikki's already a pretty odd experience, but like the fact that this is now like Yume Nikki the game,
yeah.
like Yume Nikki the movie the game, is so like unsettling, and I like love it, but I also think it's like awful.
It is the perfect example of like the commercial side of games not knowing what to do with art. you know, they just like they
Yeah,
don't know how to handle art, so they just like, well, we'll remake it. You know,
yeah.
there's not the
I know,
idea,
yeah. And it's like it was already free, so they're like, okay, we'll remake it and add a price tag, and we'll put it in 3D this time.
right?
That'll really get people to buy it because it'll the graphics are better in their
Yeah,
opinion.
yes, much better. um, but it is like you don't have like the like, oh no, we need to replicate the raw experience. It's not like, university restoration projects for games. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you'll see in front of, like, you see them in front of movies a lot of times, like older movies are like, restored at X and Y film program or whatever. um,
yeah,
and there is some like I think it's coming, as more and more schools just have game programs where they didn't, like, 10 or 15 years ago.
yeah,
uh, you'll get more that are like arts minded. You'll get more like weird art game people, and eventually they get older and have influence, and it's, give it another 20 years maybe.
yeah.
But
I think too, like I guess I mean that would be interesting, or I guess like the school I go to doesn't like have any sort of like, or for the most part doesn't really have any sort of like game development focused
right.
stuff. And I hope that if sort of academia starts to take more influence or starts to develop like sort of curriculum around video games, I do hope part of that is preservation, because that's one thing that like really scares me about video games as a
Yes.
medium, is that like especially the older ones are so tied to like particular hardware that like especially with, I think the death of Flash like really illustrates this, is like it's so easy for them to become like just totally unplayable. And I think like, and I'm only saying this for myself, but like,
Yeah.
I know that a lot of like people have to earn a living as well. And I think that like the only like answer to like the loss of video games so far isn't sort of any institution, but is like piracy.
Yeah.
Like for myself, if anyone wants to pirate my game, or literally just email me, like I will send it a key for
Yeah.
free.
I
Like I do
I
not care.
I
Like
have on the I have on the bottom of everything. It's like on the bottom of every Indiepocalypse page. I'm like, it's nice if you buy it, but also if you go to all these devs pages that I link on the exact page, a lot of times you find those games for free. You know.
yeah, it's like I think that especially with the centralization of the internet as that's occurred, and stuff gets, every game is always on Steam, right? But like
Yeah.
Steam will eventually go down,
Right.
whether it be in 5 years or 100. Steam will eventually go down, and we're going to lose a bunch of gaming history. And I
Right.
think that like the only way to sort of beat that, I think, is like with it sounds bad to be like the only way is with piracy,
Yeah.
or like universities and like institutions actually sort of taking the time to appreciate the video game artistic canon, and sort of like actually making an effort to preserve these.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I beat this drum too much, but games are really hurt by the fact that we don't have a single box that just like plays things. Like,
Yeah,
and for whatever imperfect emulation can be, like a box that is like an emulator box, that people can just like churn out cheap releases for. That, like, instead of like this weird gray area of like trusting that these different like piracy archives don't get taken down, uh, but also like it's harder for like, I can't remember, remember someone saying, and I think about a lot of like, sure, all these games are available, but how often does someone like, think about the person who spent 8 hours working, like, and they want to think about how they set up RetroArch.
oh yeah, 100%. Like the level of accessibility there, even though like I feel like the like open source and like emulation communities like make it better every day, right?
Yeah.
Like I do think the fact that like no one can like go pull up, or at least as far as I'm aware, without like weird homebrew stuff, they can't just pull up RetroArch on their Switch and then download like Action 52 or whatever,
Yeah.
or like Bonk's Adventure. The fact that they can't do that is like it makes it way harder, because your average person doesn't want to go on their laptop and then install RetroArch, and then if it's like a console that has a or like figure out all the like configuration and stuff.
Yeah,
Like it's so inaccessible
and
to
even
your
with
average
like,
person.
drag and drop onto like a BizHawk or something, there's still like I have to download BizHawk, I have to set up my controller, I need to then find all these ROMs all over the place. Like there's a commerce does a very is unfortunately very good at spreading art. You know. um,
Yeah, yeah.
and like if someone's like, I'm just gonna pick up a sandwich at home from work, and then also at the Walmart they have Action 52 on a USB stick that costs like $5, and then you plug it into your emulator box at home, and you can just play it. Like there's never underestimate the
I
culture.
will say,
Yeah,
like I think very rarely, if ever, and actually I won't even compliment them, but I do think like very rarely will you hear me compliment like a company. But I
yeah,
will say what Valve's done with like the Steam Deck and like sort of giving Linux gaming to the masses, or like at
yeah,
least making it accessible. I think stuff like that is sick,
yes.
you know? And I
It
think the more that we see of like sort of people pushing like open platforms and open standards, I think that'll help. But like you said, like you still can't go buy Action 52 at Walmart. So
right, right.
99% of people will not
Hey,
buy it.
someone's bringing back Big Rigs though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Big Rigs is on Steam. I hope
No
it's.
shit. Okay, I'm gonna have to get
I hope. I don't know if it's out yet, but I also I hope it's still
it.
preserved and it's like because the preservation of bad art is a good sign for game preservation in general.
Yeah, I mean, like it's cool to get it with its flaws, like with like Melee, like Smash Bros or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think like all the bugs in there, because I'm not like a big Smash guy. I suck at Smash Bros. But like with Melee, from my understanding, like half of the fun with that game is the fact that there's so many like bugs in it that are exploited in competitive play.
Right.
Like, I think that's sort of a not something unique to video games, but definitely something that like really comes through with them is like the fact that like sometimes stuff gets there's bugs everywhere and there's exploits and like
Yeah.
video games are always going to be imperfect and like software is always going to be imperfect. I think
Yeah.
is just like great.
And like people do make revised editions of things, but very people are not often patching their albums. Uh,
Yeah.
of being like, oh, I adjusted. You don't see the patch notes for like, oh, we changed the chords in this track. I mean, this one we changed the mixing level on this one. It's like it's something that like constantly changes and morphs with time. Speaking of things that don't that do and do not also morph and change with time, Finn, I have two important questions for you that have
Mhm.
become the standard Indiepocalypse questions. Uh, so that we can start our second segment and get this phone call at least available to us. Um, the first is, what's your favorite type of rock?
What's my favorite kind of rock? I guess sedimentary.
Okay, and
That's where I was gonna take it.
yes, well, it's an open-ended question. There is no correct or incorrect answer to that question. Uh, and the second question, which this one is of course optional, um, should you not have an answer, so it's even more accessible. Do you have a favorite Toho character? Or sorry, what is?
Is
No, I was right. It was due. I was due. It is due. Correct. I almost forgot my own question.
Toho, is that are those like the people that made Godzilla?
No, well, that is Toho. Yes, but the Toho I'm talking about that I don't know how to properly adjust my pronunciation is of course the TOUHOU, the long running Dojin bullet hell franchise with the healthy fan game community.
No, I actually don't. Which
I
is a
mean,
lame answer, but
no, it's a common answer. It's
Hmm.
Toho. It's much like the aforementioned Yume Nikki is a a Japanese indie darling that is also equal parts well known and obscure.
Yeah.
It's worth checking out though because it's very cool,
Yeah,
especially
I'll have to look it up.
the like fan game aspect of it is a very neat thing that is not done really often at all in any other like if you want to, it's very open with fan game licensing. I say with intense quotes. I think you can just do it. I think it's kind of fairly open about it within a little minor guidelines. But that said, thank you for joining me here today. I mean, you'll be back very quickly because you'll be my secondary co-host, I believe, in this floor segment. But we'll be back in about. Oh, where's my foobar? There it is. Hell is this? How long is this song? 1 minute and 5 seconds. Be back then. I made the special Nishijo break image for specifically when I play the track Untitled off of that album, Speak Squeak Creek. If people are unfamiliar, Melpinata is kind of like a noise rock duo. They just make like very, very aggressive, noisy, like minute-long songs or so. And on that album, that is a Speak Squeak Creek, the final track, which is how long is that thing? It is. It's also not very long. Yeah. I have too much music in here, and Yes, it is. It's about 2 minutes and 35 seconds, and it's the 25th track of the album. And what it is, untitled in brackets. It is the previous 24 songs all played at once. It's chaotic. It's super.
That sounds great.
It's 24 ultra abrasive songs all played at the exact same time, and they slowly like fade out as it's like some of them one of them is 11 seconds long, as eventually you kind of reach all of them and the sound becomes more normalized and you approach a single, it's still a chaotic song, but it rules. I love it.
Sick.
So you were saying, sorry, before I cut you off, how many people something?
Oh yeah. You'd mentioned like going to PAX. Like, how many conventions do you like normally go to?
Oh, I for a little while I was doing almost like one a month. I'm trying to. I've got 2 in May. I'm doing PAX and Amaze like almost back to back practically. But the benefit
Amaze is the one out in Germany, right?
Yes. I was.
Oh, that's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, because I get to see all the part of also traveling out to events is being able to see the people that I don't normally get to see. All these Indiepocalypse contributors out on the show floor,
Yeah.
I'm typing a message in case they are like, not on the phone line but can see their phone. But yeah, I've applied to a lot of them because I've found, fortunately, that like I can cover my costs generally by traveling.
Yeah.
Like MagFest was like well above my cost going to MagFest. Like,
oh, nice.
I like super exceeded my cost at MagFest, and that was like me, like having to like constantly pull people over and like point at my table and be like, "Look, these things are video games." Like I can only imagine like how well I would have done if people like inherently came over and knowing they were video games and stopping because they knew they were video games.
Yeah.
That's when I am. That's why I'm trying to. Also because I can drive to Boston, and I can so I can put everything in my car. I'm traveling with more than like my booth is more than just what will fit in a suitcase.
Yeah.
So I got like a bunch of wire walls. I got some shelves and pegs. I ordered some resealable zip bags to hang onto pegs and hang on the walls. I watched like a bunch of like game shop walkthrough videos to kind of get a sense of their aesthetics.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, so the idea is it's going to have like it's going to be like an enclosed booth with a big, Indiepocalypse banner, than just like a bunch of Indiepocalypse posters and posters from different like games within like the tape market. Just like plastered all, kind of like you're walking into like a game shop.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
it's really cool.
that's what I'm hoping. Because I mean, fundamentally,
No, that sounds so sick.
it is like a game shop basically. It's like I have like a night almost like 100 different things.
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool because I did really like how like popular like retro video game stores have gotten.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's just like I don't know. I really liked those when I was like a kid, and I still do when I get the chance to go to one. But I wish there was like an actual like video, like local like indie game store where they sold
Yeah.
like physical indie games. It'd be so cool.
I'm doing
I
a
wish there
yeah.
was. Oh,
No,
sorry,
go
what were
ahead.
you gonna say? Oh no, I was kind of. What
No,
were you gonna
if you
say?
my general rule here is that I'm here every week. You're not here every week. If I'm talking, you're talking. Just plow through me, and I'll stop talking. Um,
Okay. I was just gonna say that like there's not really any like I'm out in like Iowa, so
yeah.
there's no real like video game conferences or anything like that
Yes.
of
Right.
note. So
Oh yeah. You were in like a cultural no man's land in terms of like the U.S. of like
yeah. No, it's bad. It's bad.
right. Yeah. No. I'm a coastal elite, of course. So I have the luxury of all these mega cities. I say
Lucky.
as if Providence is like barely a city, um, but it's
Oh
cool.
my God.
But it is like there is like I'm going to like a zine fest in like a couple weeks, and last time I went there, there was like a game shop nearby, and I'm gonna this time I'm gonna think I'm gonna like I think I lacked the confidence last year, but this year I've like after the event after the zine fest, I'm gonna start drop by and be like, hey, what if I would you want to like sell my indie tapes I have here, like in your shop? Uh,
Oh,
just see if they
that's
go
actually
for
a
it.
good idea. Yeah, I wonder too if like because I feel like the overlap of like people who play indie games and people who like are into retro gaming is pretty good.
Yeah,
I think that like I do wonder like if like retro game stores could sort of help
right.
with like the physical side of things,
Because
you
that's
know?
what it is. Like it is like a retro game shop, and I just like if she's ever here, Ash K, the aforementioned uh, phone caller, has tapes in like bookstores up in Toronto, I believe. Just like
Oh, that's sick.
did that thing of like, hey, I'm a local game maker. Here's some of our games. Can we sell them here? And they're like, and the people are like, yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I know in my like college town we've got like a few local like art sales like like around that like sort of underground like music punk scene kind of thing.
Yeah,
And I've been thinking about I missed the deadline for this year, but I think maybe next year I'll do that where I'll get some like physical copies of my games because it'd be super interesting to see. It'd be interesting to hear people's feedback or even just their thoughts outside of like Steam reviews, you know?
yes. Oh yeah, no, routinely would just do like a local market, and like there was like a punk flea market in Boston that's like I haven't done yet, just simply because it's you have to like I don't know like DM. It's like it became a pain in the ass to sign up for it. They used to have like a Google
Yeah.
form, and now I think you have to like watch their Instagram and then like message. I just want to use a website and have a fill out a form like I
Yeah.
there's an upcoming Providence scene, and so far as I know, they only have like a Discord, and I'm like, that sucks. I'm like, at some point, probably at the event, like on Monday, I'm gonna ask them, like, do you only have a Discord for this? Can I just like make a friggin' website, like, because also like
No, for real.
how hard it's like a pain for people to find things, like if you have like a unique name for a thing, like say you had like Iowa Gaming Collective, and someone's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I heard about this," and then they go to find it, and it's like all you have is a Discord and not a website. Like, how do they find that Discord?
Yeah, that always pisses me off with like a lot of like online communities when it's just like Discord based because I'm like I mean it's nice once you're in it, right?
You're
But
right.
it's I don't know. I guess I like Discord much more on like a micro scale with just like friends
Yeah.
because when you get on like a giant Discord with like 10,000 people and you're getting like spammed with notifications, like that's
Right.
not the most like inviting thing ever. Like it sounds maybe a little bit weird, but I do think like sort of personal websites and like all that kind of stuff is just so much better. You know?
It's right because it's manageable. It's it's the Discord example, the social media example is like it's imagine. I always think of like I can, and this is so far gone whether I can't remember if someone else said it or if I said it, but it's the idea of imagine a park filled with like 6,000 dogs, and imagine being one of those dogs and how overstimulated you would be, and that's like a Discord with 10,000 people on it.
Yeah, for real. And I feel like, you almost have to be like terminally online in
Right,
like a very like unique way to be able to like be active in a community that big, and like it becomes like a job. It's like
right.
actual work, you
And
know?
I have
Like
two jobs already.
yeah, it's like it's one of those things where unless I'm like if I was still in high school sitting in study hall not like with nothing to do,
Yeah,
I would have no problem, sitting in a Discord and talking to random people all day. But like the second that like the second that it like starts to feel like work is just so unengaging, and like I feel the same way about like posting on social media.
yeah,
Like I have a Twitter. I don't post it anymore because I don't want to use that website.
right.
And and it's like even trying to like post regularly or like interact with people like that are in the indie game sphere that are cool. It's like just so exhausting when I already like have a social life outside of that, and like
Yes.
it's like my attention is already captured by like real life so much that like the computer interacting with people on the computer isn't always like the most interesting thing,
That
outside of
that
like very small communities or whatever.
that is the thing I often wonder that feels mean to think about. Is that if you're terminally online or your friends only online, you know, like,
Yeah,
do you not
and I
have
get
the
I get why people are that way, but
yeah?
like
Because sometimes it's hard to like, depending where you live, like to have that in person like friend group. But
oh
like,
yeah, like I know the people that I know in in like more rural Iowa, like I understand why, especially if like they're LGBT or whatever. Like I
yeah,
totally get why they use like Discord and stuff, and like why they make online friends because it's so like just an inhospitable environment for them.
yeah,
But like in my case, where I'm in a pretty like cool like area of I'm in Iowa City. I'm in like an area that's like actually like pretty reasonably active and has like an art scene and stuff.
yeah,
No indie game scene yet, but like there's just no reason for me to go into these like online spaces and be like super active. And at
right,
some point,
right,
it just feels like marketing, like especially on like Twitter or whatever.
yeah,
It just feels like marketing. I'm like, okay, I get like nothing out of this. Like I make games to make them. I don't make them to like sell them. You know?
right, right, and that's like it's hard to then like be like finding this community, be like, okay, these are the five people that I really like, and like divorcing them from everything else, is the
Yeah.
like having the like your work friends, indie games people are my work friends. um, then I have my other friends where I go hang out and lie on their couch and watch movies.
Yeah. And
It's
I think too with the internet, like that level of like separation that you can get in real life, or you can
yeah,
even get on like Web 1.0 with like separate forums, like just isn't there. Like everybody from all of your interests will always see your Twitter. They will always see your Instagram. They
right,
will always see, I mean, I guess Discord's probably a little bit better about splitting it up, but like you're constantly broadcasting to everyone,
yeah, it's
and it's
like
like it's exhausting.
yeah, it's the and you're also broadcasting to people who you would not want to broadcast to even.
Oh my God, yeah. Like that's I don't know. Like I like how open the internet is
Yeah,
generally, but also too, like there have been a couple times, I guess I'll like keep this just in the realm of like video games or whatever,
right,
but
right,
there have been a couple times where I've gotten people who like clearly aren't interested in the kind of video games I make, which is like fine, everyone
right.
has their own preferences. And then like they make it abundantly clear that their issue is not with like the art itself, or like, oh, there's a bug here or whatever, and they're just like, I don't like this type of thing, and it's like, okay, but you went out of your way to buy it and download it, and
Yeah,
like the tags for what the game is are right there on Steam and itch.io.
right,
Like
right.
if you didn't want to play like an artsy like walking simulator kind of thing, and you wanted to play like Call of Duty and drink Mountain Dew, that is available on Steam. That is available there.
Yeah,
It's like I like it is mind-boggling when someone like like walks into your like hair cutting salon and asks why you haven't made them like a pepperoni pizza, you know?
Right, right, exactly. And yeah, and it's even worse of the idea of you don't need to tell that person. You simply do not need to, like, the assumption that all creators have like access. You have access to all creators, and you can just tell them you don't like their thing. Is like, no, just don't. You should never tell. Do not engage with creators ever. Leave them alone. Oop, I lost them. So it's just me now. Just me loose on the call.
Oops, sorry. I accidentally clicked out.
Okay, I would say do not
About that.
engage with creators, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, you took that to the most
It
extreme
disappeared.
version.
No,
Uh,
I opened up a link and I accidentally dragged it over the Discord tab.
oh,
Um, no, I agree. It is like weird how like someone can be having the worst day and they like download your game and then they send you an email and they're like, I hated this. And it's like, oh, like, okay, like that's fine. But like, I don't know. It's that whole like constructive criticism thing where like
yes,
some people are very good at it. Like when they say like you should ask your friends, like ask people around you to play your games, that's totally true. Because like they'll run into stuff um and they'll like sort of they'll see the blind spots and the areas you've missed when it comes to like making it. And I guess this is true for any art, but like the internet is such a like void of just like any sort of nuance that like the second that someone doesn't like it, they're just like, they get, I don't know, it because I haven't had that many people be like super mean or
right,
anything, but like it like this sort of the conversation that I feel like I'm having through my games with the people who play them gets really weird like when people start writing like reviews about it. Like
yeah,
I don't know, I've just always felt like, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but I've always felt very very weird like reading reviews. Like I kind of try to avoid it unless
right,
there's like bugs, because then I want to fix
right.
that. But
And then there's the thing that your friends have that these strangers don't have, is that you know that your friend's frame of reference. You know,
yeah,
like you have no idea where these random strangers are coming from. You could be
I
like,
think too it's like, I think too like generally if your friends like they sort of have like they like you said, they have a frame of reference, they have some concept that like that they understand they're going to work from, and it's also a
yeah,
lot harder to say like super just like harsh shit in person.
yeah,
Like when you phrase stuff in person, it's not that you're sugarcoating it, but you're forced to sort of like illustrate it more.
right.
And I
You're
think
forced
like
to,
online you can just type like fuck you into like the review and then
right.
just leave it. That's the
You,
entire conversation and not respond. Whereas in
you
person you can't just say fuck you and walk away.
right. You can look at the person and go, oh, that's another human being. What if I was nice to them?
Yeah.
Like, uh, that's that other problem of like the the truth tellingness of it all, of like, well, it's like, no, you can also just be nice to people. It's not like uh your harsh your harsh but true criticism is 100% necessary, because what if it isn't also? I remember I'll never stop thinking about a guy at a convention I was at, and I was demoing. I had one of the Indiepocalypse games up, and I was demoing them, and he was like, "You looking for feedback?" Because also, like, feedback culture seems like way strong in games compared to other art forms, of
Mhm.
like the assumption that a developer wants feedback at all.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was like, "No, I didn't make it. It's done." Um, and I felt like he was stewing, because after he played it, he like said a bunch of things and ran away, like, pieces of feedback, and then ran away. Uh,
I know, it's like, oh, like listen, like I do think that like being able to sort of interact with somebody's work, I don't know,
yeah,
it's kind of like in games, it feels like people's criticism of video games often comes down to like, and I'm I'm majoring in computer science. I'm
yeah,
like a STEM like I'm a STEM person, but like it feels very like STEM bro-y, where
right,
like they're looking at like this sort of like equation and they're trying to like balance it or whatever, or like solve it. And it's like, I don't think that's exactly what games need. Like,
yeah.
I think I really like the way that like you know like Tim Rogers and like Action Button.
Familiar with, yes. Have
Yeah,
not.
and he makes like the 6 hour like video reviews or whatever.
Yes,
Like I appreciate that kind of like video game criticism a lot more, where someone really like looks into the thematic elements
right.
and like dissects it as a piece of art versus like, oh my god, like like oh it's this texture. There's some like Z buffer fighting right here, and like it like the texture looks wrong. Like
Right.
that is very useful. You know what I mean?
But it's like it's a part of it. Imagine if like the entirety of film criticism was about like camera movements and like framing, and that's all everyone talked about movies.
Exactly. Like I think that this sort of need to like have every game even and this this is which people could joke about this that like my
Yeah.
games have bugs or whatever, right? But like the idea that the art that you're experiencing has to be perfect, or like not even has to be perfect, but like that sometimes the mistakes and the things that we leave in that we didn't mean to like are somehow bad, I just think is like super, I don't want to say toxic,
Yeah.
I don't think it's like that serious, but like I don't
It's
know,
like
yeah, it's
limiting
just
of
like I don't know, like sometimes I feel like art has to be messy or whatever. I think that's
right.
what makes like, like indie music or whatever, right? Or like
Yeah.
self-produced music so good is the fact that like you can tell this is someone in their bedroom,
Right.
like just doing that after they get off their McDonald's shift or whatever.
There's a charm to when you can hear like the sound of a guitar string being hit, not the sound that comes through, but you can feel like you can hear the sound of the string itself being hit.
Exactly. No one would play Big Rigs Over the Road Racing if it was like like a perfectly okay truck simulator.
Right.
The reason Big Rigs is so fun is because like the collision doesn't work, and like it was clearly made by people under horrible cruncher who just didn't care.
Right. Right. There's like it was like we need another $3 game for the Walmart bin. You have 2 weeks. Churn it out.
Like yeah, I think I don't know. I think that's always like super cool. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool seeing the fingerprints on like the clay model that someone's molded or whatever.
Right. Right. I always think I never remember the exact thing, but that Brian Eno quote about like people love the imperfections of things, and that's what perseveres.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before.
And that's and people do like are always drawn to like the weirdness of things, of like how something doesn't work, or because also that's what like makes it stand out.
Yeah.
Like the world's like most perfect game, just like you can see this. It's a fun practice of like look at to open up like top movie album whatever lists,
Mm.
um, um, and then whatchamacallit, and then like looking at the top selling, and then years later was the critical top of those years, and there's almost like zero
Yeah.
overlap.
Oh yeah, it's always so interesting. Like the born in the wrong generation people or whatever.
Right.
Um, the people who are like, oh, I was born in the wrong generation because like I wanted to see Nirvana live or whatever. Like I totally get that sentiment, but like, and obviously I wasn't around then, but like all the music that like we have like art that we appreciate, like I think it's very easy to sort of like put it on a pedestal and imagine that like the entire culture sort
Right.
of like appreciated it when it came out, and it's like that's totally not the case, right? Like,
No.
you know, like Yume Nikki, like I guarantee Yume Nikki, more people know about Yume Nikki now than they did like the year it came out or whatever,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like a lot of times, like our sort of appreciation of art in retrospect is like we sort of view it as this like monolithic thing when it really wasn't. Like Yume
Right.
Nikki was probably made by like some person in their bedroom, right? Like,
Right.
and for the first 3 or whatever years it existed, it didn't even come over to the West. Like, I think it also like kind of makes art very daunting for people to get
Yeah.
involved with because they're like, oh, these things are so big and they were like, there's only one monoculture and like, Nevermind by Nirvana was super popular in it, or like, Doom got super popular right away, and it's like, on some level, there are like overnight successes. That is true, but
Right.
like at the end of the day, these are just people making things, and a lot of times, like that build up and that appreciation for that piece of art takes like 5, 10, 15, 20. It could
Yeah.
be like 100 years to
And
actually like build up a whole like canon around it.
right. Right. And both of those things are also like built on like legacies. Like Nirvana did not just invent this sound out of nowhere. You know.
Yeah.
This is they are the breakout of like swelling underground music movements. And like the burgeoning indie scene and all this sort of thing. Uh, I always think of The Thing as like the classic example of something that was like bombed and panned on release, and people are like, "Oh no, it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made." It's like, tell that to people in 1982, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Like I think also too with the whole like sort of scene like grunge or like indie games or whatever, like bubbling underneath the surface. I feel like a lot of times, um, and once again, this is like a white American guy saying this, so this
yes,
this could be different in other places, but I think a lot of times we do like to attribute like artistic movements to like one or two people or
right,
like and I think it's always so much more complicated than that. And like
yeah,
art, even if it's made by one person, I'm a solo dev. There are so many people that have influenced what I do and what I work on that like Coda and Aleph and whatever else I put up, they were not just made by me. They were made by everybody that influenced every game I ever played, right? Like,
yeah,
and I think it's so easy to ascribe like, oh yeah, like I think like Indie Game the movie really did this to, like indie game culture, where
right,
it's like it was like Phil Fish that made Fez, and it was like Jonathan Blow or whatever who made Braid or whatever. Like, and we put them on a pedestal, but it's like a lot of these people are coming either out of like the AAA video game industry or
yes,
like out of like the Flash like Newgrounds days, like uh even art that is made by one person I feel like is a collective work on some level.
yeah, right. You're taking influence from like everyone. No one is like, oh, I just made art. I never heard of art before. I just made a new one. Um, Unlike anything else that's ever been made before. And check it out.
Yeah,
And everyone is like indebted to, and often in like less obvious places than you would think. That's you know to use the recently mentioned Nirvana as an example. That's his whole thing, his whole spiel on the Unplugged, talking about like trying to buy Leadbelly's guitar. You wouldn't draw naturally uh like a one-to-one point between Nirvana and Leadbelly, but like that exists.
yeah, 100%.
And that's
And I
like
think too, it's often interesting because I feel like you know, really good artists a lot of the times, like a Kurt Cobain or whatever, um, or like I guess like in the indie game sphere or whatever. Like oftentimes they are like I feel like pretty good curators of
right.
like their influences, right? Like I feel like the best artists are always like such like whatever their sort of niches that like they like always give like really good recommendations. Like they always really know. Um, um, I guess I don't know. It is interesting. It is interesting to see like how people sort of like navigate that. I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's because it is like you know. Uh, to repeat myself, the thing is, the weird thing about doing the show is you repeat yourself constantly to a theoretical audience, but you're saying to do something to a human being for the first time that you never met. But
Mm,
I think a lot about Star Wars in this way. It's like
mm.
the big budget example of like, George Lucas liked Kurosawa movies, and he liked, old adventure serials, and then you make Star Wars movies in the future liking Star Wars. Uh, it is kind of like it's that sort of like derivative style of art where it's just like it doesn't feel like someone is a mixture of interests. It feels like something got popular and they made that thing. Goat
Yeah,
Simulator
it's
is
just
popular, so they made Snake Simulator.
Yeah, like it's so easy to be like to sort of act like these pieces of art just sort of came from nothing.
Right.
Like the amount of people, this relates back to Yume Nikki. The amount of people who like knew about Undertale and then saw Yume Nikki and called it like an Undertale clone, like post like 2015, 2016 or
Right.
whatever was like insane. Like I've seen that on like Reddit or whatever, like just like across the internet a few times. People are like, this just kind of looks like an Undertale clone. And Toby Fox didn't copy Yume Nikki, but like
No.
clearly there's an influence there,
Right.
right?
But
And
yeah, I
I think the
mean,
fact that like people miss out on that's kind of funny.
right. Like if you look at it, like just on the surface of Undertale, it's like Yume Nikki and its mother and its moon and its Toho. Like in
Mm.
on like this just the surface level of like, oh no, here are all these other disparate influences that go into Undertale, and that's just like. But there's probably tons of things that you don't even think about that influence all these works. And then like it's the influential problem runs into it when you have like someone who clearly has like one point of reference and they're just making exactly that thing.
Yeah, and like I feel like it's something a lot of times that like younger people or like kids will do, right?
Yeah.
And I think like, it's a definitely a good way to learn.
Yeah.
Like I don't think people should be ashamed about it, but it's just like, wear those influences on your sleeve.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's a bad thing to say like I took inspiration from this. Like I
Yeah.
feel like there's this culture, especially because I feel like sadly the indie game space has taken so much from like or like a lot of times like like with the whole like feedback culture and stuff like a lot of times people like to sort of view it as like a one man show. Like
Right.
I do like kind of wish, and maybe I'll do this with the next thing I make, is like it would be cool if in like game credits, like it became a thing where like you said some of your influences or whatever, right?
Right.
Like or just art in general, like say like, hey, I was influenced by this or this or this, not
Right.
to say that people owe it to the people who influenced them or whatever, but like I think that would be like an interesting concept of like, hey, like I took inspiration from Firewatch and from Half-Life and from, whatever else.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can probably sometimes see like little glimmers of it in like special thanks sometimes, but like,
Oh yeah, 100%.
but there is it's interesting to like trace lineages and like for art to be in conversation with other art, um, and I think that's uh, like right. It feels I think it only feels strong in games simply because games are too young to have like developed in the same kind of distance from it all, from like this
Yeah.
kind of like grind set capitalist hellscape. Uh, like so many indie devs just came up into it, so that's just what they have is the internet, um,
Yeah.
which has a specifically because you're right, it doesn't have like making your music. If you're making your music purely through the internet, you're gonna have a much different experience than having like basement punk shows. Like if you don't have any of those and
Yeah.
you only have the internet, which
Yeah,
is
I mean, like, I don't know. I've been like I mean, you probably have this experience too. I've been like uploading shit on the internet since I was like, pretty young.
yeah.
And like experience of putting something out there and then you get zero views and then you like watch it on like YouTube or whatever, and then you watch it one time and then you get one view and that's all it ever has is
Right.
like, and this is not to shit on the internet, but like that is such a like heartbreaking and like isolating experience,
Yeah.
you know? And
That
I think that like I wish there was some way to get like indie games out there in a way that was more than just uploading it to like a server.
Yes, I think about that. I mean, unsurprisingly, I think about that a lot. Um, um, and that's part of why I also like keep my distance generally from people from like this. Besides being busy, is like I think there's a benefit to me being a stranger to people submitting to Indiepocalypse. Um, I think there is like, oh, a stranger, it's just some random person I do not know said, hey, yeah, I'd love to. Said this thing's good. I wanted my thing. Um,
Yeah, it's
versus
wonderful. Like it's like genuinely the coolest feeling that I think I've ever had in my entire life is like the first time I think it was itched or no, I think it was Congregate. I think I uploaded like a web game I made like in
yeah,
early high school onto Congregate. It's deleted now. And like people like I actually saw people play it. It was like the most rewarding thing. And then like I put it up on Newgrounds and like I saw like people actually like leaving comments
yeah,
like and not in like a like egotistical way, because like not all of them were positive, but just the fact that like people were taking time to like actually kind of look at what I was doing
right.
and that I could go and like, click on their profile and see what they made and what games they were making and comment on theirs. Like that feedback is just so great. And I feel like that's really emboldened when you do stuff in person.
Yes, yeah, because then you like it'd be awkward if you just like didn't pay attention. You're just like everyone was like staring at the wall. It'd be really weird. Like
Yeah, like it's so much easier, I feel like, in artistic spaces to like in person to like really sort of connect with someone because yeah, I don't know. I think a big part of it on the internet too, because obviously it is like digital and there's nothing that beats human interaction,
yeah,
um but I think the fact that like the internet has become so like capitalized on and like it is such like a money making like grind set culture kind of place and it's all centralized under a few websites, like I think that definitely has a part to play in it, where like a
Right.
lot of it does just feel like yelling into the void.
And all of like the successes, quote unquote, that you would get on the internet are also like these like value neutral, like being like, oh, I got a lot of followers, but like that's not a good that's not an inherently good thing, you know. Like it feels like a weird
Yeah, like
thing
it's
that.
all quantified.
Right. It's like, you know who else has a lot of followers? Fucking like Elon Musk has a lot of followers. Does that mean he's the best because he has so many followers? It's like, no. Like
Yeah,
follower,
it's
like so it's like how can you value something like follower count or share count or anything like it when like you evaluate in one situation but not another. It just feels very meaningless as like a metric on its own.
yeah, like I almost wish that like social media didn't have like number of followers or people that you were following or whatever.
Right.
Like it would be cool, and I think it's just a thought experiment, but it would be cool if there was like a social media where like the only sort of metric that you had was comments. Like you
Right.
didn't know how many people viewed your post. All you had was comments and then the people that commented profiles. Like I
Yeah.
think taking out the quantification of social interaction like in like internet spaces, I think it would probably do a lot, but also too, I think it would make things a lot less profitable. So it probably won't
Yes. Co-host
happen
is
anytime.
shut. Co-host did not do that. Is also shut down. um,
Oh, really?
yes, but I think there
Oh,
were other problems there, and I don't think taking away comments or taking away numbers fills because I don't know if Tumblr has numbers. Does it?
I
Uh,
it
like I don't think
might.
Tumblr has
I
like
don't use
follower
it,
counts
but
or anything like that. I mean, they might have like repost counts, like likes and that kind of
mm,
thing, but I don't think they have like follower counts or things like that. Um,
yeah,
they just have notes, which is like probably the best version of just a flattened like here are all the comments, the shares, and the likes, all just flattened into notes. You know.
yeah. I think that is probably good because from what I understand, because I don't use Tumblr myself, but what I've heard in general is that it is a little less toxic than the rest of the internet.
Right.
You
And
know?
I think that's the benefit of it just like shrinking, and being
Yeah,
smaller, and
I
being
kind of wish there was like an easy way to like, like I think they called it like the indie web. Like
yeah.
I wish, because it's such a hassle to get into or whatever. But I do wish that like the indie web or whatever could like really become like a big like full thing. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's like trick because it's always these space. It's like the same thing with physical spaces in that they are dependent on somebody maintaining them until that somebody just stops maintaining it, then it's gone.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Oh
It's
wait,
tricky.
do you have someone on the line? Hello.
Yeah, you do have me on the line. I'm sorry to say, for the most part, I've just been handing people the receiver and they were listening in
No, that's
because everybody is a little bit too shy to speak at the con suddenly, and a lot of people don't know Indiepocalypse like right off the bat.
no, that's fine.
I sent a picture of Len, uh, Indiepocalypse 62 fame,
Oh
into the group chat.
yes, I was
But so far, it's been nice. People have been having a good time listening in.
the true pirate radio. Yeah, I'm like, who is that? I don't know. I don't. Granted, I don't recognize anyone's face because I know people through the internet. I have not
Hmm.
met, I have not met most people in person. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, it is. Wait, sorry. Oh yes, no, that Len. Yes. I was like, I was there are a couple of Lens spinning around in my brain. Um, um,
The last Indiepocalypse, the game about spirits
yes.
being angry about rivers being diverted.
Yes, I 100% know who that is. The thing is, there's someone else who I think also goes by Len. That was in like another recent one. Um, so, Ash, live from the convention floor. How is your day going? Is it busy? What's up?
It's starting to pick up like right about now. A person came by earlier mentioning that apparently they've heard of me in like visual novel circles
Okay.
because people have been thinking about selling their games physically and porting a visual novel to a console is upwards of like a few tens of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And if you do it on a computer, then you can do that a lot easier.
Yeah, I just got a
That-
fresh. I got a fresh stack today of 200 USB sticks, for
Hell yeah.
for probably about $200. So
Yep. It's also like a lot easier when you do it in bulk. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to like push people to be like, hey, this is a thing you can do, and if we pool our money together, we can do it a lot cheaper and easier.
yes,
And also, like from what I understood, visual novels have a harder time at game conventions because if
Right.
you like put it in the exhibitor area, then you have like the worst possible exhibitor game where people either sit there for half an hour or they bounce after seeing that there's text and an image on the screen that are
Yes.
not moving and like walk on hours. And in the artist alley, that has kind of the opposite effect where it's like, oh yeah, this is a thing. It's gonna be like this. You can buy it. It's like a book.
right, and that it's the weird. It's a problem I run into a lot of, like, do I go into artist alleys? Do I go in the marketplaces? Do I go into the exhibitor space? I usually try to get into the exhibitor space because it's cheaper.
1 second.
Yeah. But yes, no. Speaking of physical things, when I was looking at, oh hello,
Oh wow! Hi.
hello.
Say hi, but right now you're just on the phone. There's a stream happening, and you're on a stream at the same time.
Oh yes, hello, listener who may
Hello.
be hearing. I am Andrew.
Unfortunately, the stream is too fast paced to catch onto you. Yeah, so far it's been an adventure. One of the things also has been explaining what is in each game and also explaining that this is like a format that exists.
Yes. Oh my god.
I've taken to taping a very abridged, incorrect summary to the front of the printed like zines from the Indiepocalypse
Right.
with like a line per each game. Because I feel like even if I just have a bunch of them on the table, it's still like very daunting to
Yes. Yeah.
process all that.
Yeah. Yeah, you have like the luxury in that, like a semi-luxury in your own tape, in that it's like these are all things that I made, which kind of gives it a more like unifying kind of what you're like, oh, this is a bunch of short games that this one person made, which kind of helps, I think. But when it's like there are 10 people all together, they're all different games, like, yeah, no, that's a problem that I have. What I did very recently, I got gifted a tablet, an old Chromebook rather, and I put Obsidian on it. And I tagged all the games, and have all the folders, have all the story, like all the store pages and descriptions and everything. So if someone's like, "Hey, I want an RPG," they hit the little RPG tag, and it has all the RPGs.
Well, there you have the privilege of having all of the Indiepocalypses there.
Yes.
And I try to keep a limited selection to like 6 issues right now.
Oh yeah, no. I would never expect you to have 64 Indiepocalypses available. It is.
That's crazy that there's been that many.
Yeah,
That's
no.
sick.
I've been doing it for just this January was the 5th year anniversary of Indiepocalypse.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah.
Wow. It is straight up 5 years. I wasn't mistaken.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like, 5 years ago I had shout out to I forget their studio name, but they make a cool puzzle game called Collapsis, I believe. I met them in Ohio. Wraith Games. I knew it was something ghost related. Wraith Games. And I said, "Hey, buy me a PAX. Can I buy a PAX badge from you?" And they bought me a PAX badge. And I was like, guerrilla selling Indiepocalypse 1 on the show floor, on like strips of paper out of a Ziploc bag.
Wow.
And now,
wait, how were you selling it on the strips of paper?
I had codes on them. I printed up like a bunch of codes on paper, on like strips of paper, and just like cut them all.
I see. I see.
And now 5 years later, I bought a whole ass booth. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like with the strips of paper, you need to roll them up very tightly and put them in those like little Ziploc baggies that have like leaves of weed on them.
Yes.
Just to like make it look more illicit.
I ordered so yesterday I ordered a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of walls and price guns and like little pegs and stuff, and I also ordered custom bags, because they're only like $60 to get like custom paper bags with a little Indiepocalypse, like the little my sticker one, which is like the which issue is that? Is that 32? Is somewhere I say somewhere around there it'll be like 17. Yeah, it's definitely not 32. Oh, it's 20. I split the difference. But because I was given, Teal had given me that cutout a while ago for me to make a sticker of it, and I'm printing that on a bag, so people will be walking around PAX East theoretically with branded paper bags that say Indiepocalypse on the side.
Sick.
It's weird to realize how far it's come in like 5 years of just being like, yo, indie people, you want some money?
And it's like, it's
right.
It's not a lot. Like, I've realized, like, I think my pitch for 2025 is like.
1 second.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
You can see what side of it.
Yes, no, to talk in the chat about, like, yeah, there is like something that really gets missed out of when you just kind of like, when someone's like very important piece of art is just like a thing you scroll by, you know, one of the other 30 things that you happen to scroll by in your day.
That's cool.
So it's like super bizarre when you think about that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it is kind of insane how disposable art is on the internet.
Right,
because
right.
it's so big.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back.
Hello. We're talking about the disposability of art, which is part of why I'm doing physical, because physical stuff is like less disposable in a way. Abby was on the show, commissioned dev for one of the more recent issue, which means in the last couple of years, talking about how someone had given her, like, had bought some Indiepocalypses and then was moving and downsizing and like gave her issue, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's like a thing you can, like, having a thing that you can like pass around. Like, a friend gave me a book and that I'm working through, and like, would I've ever touched it if they emailed me a PDF of it, you know?
No, for real. I mean, the fact too, like, in terms of like preservation, I don't think that, like, having it physically is like a silver bullet. I mean, retro games are degrading all the time, right? But I do think from a preservation perspective, like, and I guess an ownership perspective too, if you want to call it that, like the fact that you can have it sitting on your shelf and, your friends or your family or your whoever, can sort of like walk by, look at it and say, oh, what's that? And you can, plug it into your computer or your console or whatever and play it. Like, I think that's so much more of like an intimate experience than just like downloading it.
Yeah.
You
like it. You can, like, that person who I posted in the, earlier in the chat who had copies of your game, if they could play through them all and be like, oh, pass them to, like, we loved them, then pass them to a friend to play,
Yeah.
And the stuff
I think too, like from a developer perspective, like there's like a sense of pride too in like having a physical thing like that. It sounds like I don't want to say, I don't know. It sounds funny, but like being able to like put a game on a shelf and be like, yeah, I made that is like insanely rewarding. Which is why I appreciate what y'all do a lot. You know?
No, it's just funny when I was looking on your website, I saw when I was like pulling links to see if you had, because I basically only post on the radio announcement on Blue Sky. Like, do you have a Blue Sky? I was looking for it, and I was like, I saw, oh, they have physical games available. That's cool. And I go, all right, I make those. I'm like, those links.
Hi, I'm back.
Hello.
The booth was getting really busy.
That's, I mean, it's, hey, that's one of those suffering from success, you know? A good problem
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Like, how is now, here's,
Bye.
oh,
Not you.
okay.
Sorry.
Well, I didn't know if you didn't know if that was a hi, I'm leaving. I have to talk to someone. Now, a question to I have often, like, you have a lot of good signage. How often do you need to explain to people these are video games? These things in here are video games.
Oh, how do I explain that?
Or how often do you have to even?
Well, I have a big sign that says artisanal video games,
Yes.
and another one that says USB in the box. And people often assume that it's cassette tapes anyway.
Yes, that's what I was assuming. Like,
And like having an open one in there helps a little bit, but not all the way.
no, you're speaking to the choir. I have attempted the same thing, having one front and center wide open, and people will go, "Oh, I didn't notice that."
Mm-hmm. And like
Right.
I have a lot of like things that are like, please read the zines. The zines have what's in them.
Yes.
That's what the games are inside. And people are often don't read the signs because text is invisible,
Yeah.
and non-text is also invisible.
Right.
So I actually don't have a solution to that. I think you just kind of have to be like, hello, do you play video games? This is video game.
Yes. Yes. I have, like, the amount of people who I have, like, when I was at MagFest, there was someone who I was like, I did that. Hello, come over here. These are video games. They bought some and then, like, came back the next day being like, hey, we played some of we fired up the games in the hotel room last night. We want more. Give us some more. And, like,
Hell yeah.
that person, like, would not have stopped by if I didn't pull them over and tell them they were video games, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it's the very niche challenge that, like, I and a single other person have, you know, of having to explain to just kind of like weird tape formats that, you know, I think, you know, other people do occasionally, like limited run, which is doing one in the exact, like Super Rare did their like tape one, like their mixtape, like their aesthetic of it. And then I think limited run is like actually making, like, using like the USB cassettes. That'll maybe help a little to people understand that those are video games, but
USB cassettes I've been looking at for a long time, and they
Yes.
seem kind of very inaccessible.
right.
And
I think a lot about, like, it seems like a real pain in the ass to plug in your computer.
yeah, I mean they're freaking awesome, but it's like I think at that point your entire unit cost is like as much as you can sell it for. Like that has to be $100
Yeah.
at least, like exclusive edition or something.
Yeah, it does. Like, definitely spikes the cost up a bit. Somebody was telling me that they were able to get them relatively, like, not as expensive as I thought they were off of, like, AliExpress. But I'm like, it's why I can sell people's games for like $5, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, yeah, and those Unity games, not Unity developer, of course, not the engine. Sell really well because, like, someone can buy like spend like $5 for an RPG, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so like those, so, you know, weird unfortunate things that are happening in Luke's Arena lore are like decent sellers at cons, because they're like, oh
Yeah,
like,
I'm not being cheap. I'm being accessible.
exactly. So, and like, cause my general advice is, like, if you're charge $5 above whatever you would charge for digital, and those are free, so $5 above free is $5.
Yeah.
And it
I think too, like it's so hard with PC to like replicate that sort of feeling of like popping a disc open
Right.
or like a cartridge and like plugging it in. And I think you like USB is like the closest thing you've got. Like
yeah.
I think that like it does strike a good balance between like this is more than me just like scanning a QR code to download like
Yes.
a rolled up piece of paper with a Steam key on it versus like like a disc or whatever, but it costs a shit ton of money to make.
Yeah. Right. I'm trying to be. I wish I. I wanted to buy the URL unlimitedrungames.com, but it was unavailable. but,
No.
but the idea that, like, I mean, that's a lot of my intention is that, oh, I can produce these things infinitely, you know. Because I think games are also have a thing about like consumption or like a collection over consumption kind of thing, where it's like people just want to collect a lot of games, but they don't actually play them.
That's a massive thing. Like I used to collect a shit ton of retro games and like I've slowed down by like
Yeah.
99% because it just felt like, okay, at what point is this just me like buying things to put on a shelf, you know?
Yes. I also did that, but I've tried to play them when I was younger, and I've been playing them a lot more now. Also, I am grateful that I did, because, you know, I was buying them like 20 years ago when they were a lot cheaper. You know?
I feel Steam is a little bit like that right now too.
Right.
And it's not even that I like want to collect them. It's just like, wow, this is cool. I want the developers to have some money while I have some money.
Yes.
Oh no, I don't have time because I'm busy making games.
Right. And like that's a whole other problem of like just games are so long. Like they're more like, you know, they're more like, you know, any given game is like a TV series or something, you know.
Wow.
Like
Okay.
Hello?
Okay. 1 minute. Hello?
Hello. Welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio. You are live on the internet. Hello, how are you doing?
Too late. Too late. People have short attention spans at cons. I'm realizing that's the worst idea than I thought.
No, it's fine. Like I like the fun of the calling con experience, and also there was also the outside chance that someone would be like, "Hey, I know what that thing is. Get me on the phone with Andrew," and I'm like, "Hey."
Mm-hmm.
Because Toronto, the secret city of Indiepocalypse, as it turns out.
One of the places that has an Indiepocalypse franchise.
Yes, yes. Besides the unofficial Indiepocalypse or I guess the official Indiepocalypse franchise. Just I remember when I went to fuck, what's that thing called? Canzine, and there were like 12 people. In like a tiny one day, like 6-hour zine fest. People were like, "Oh, hey, I'm in this thing," or "I know you. What's up? How you doing? I'm in this thing." It was like 12 people. It was absurd.
Yeah, well, I guess it's also just like a lot of indie devs are here. It's an interesting scene that is very like adjacent to the vibe that you have.
Yes. No, I mean, one of the few organizations that pays people up there for for speaking at events and everything. In the Hand-Eye Society.
Yeah. It's we're blessed to have that. We're blessed to have Dirty Rectangles. We're blessed to have Toronto Games Week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying.
I can't say anything publicly about that, but maybe there will be physical games market.
I'm trying.
Maybe.
Ash, I'm trying to find a way to smuggle myself into Toronto Games Week. I want to head up there.
If you can smuggle yourself in, let me know. I will provide what I can.
Yes. No, I was thinking of like, what reason can I be there like officially to justify my travel, basically. But
you are tabling at a market. That's your excuse.
I know. I just don't know how to table there. I haven't looked into that yet. Or every time I've looked into it, there was like still 2024 stuff. I'm talking about con logistics here. But that is a lot of, yeah. So even like Toronto, like I was broadly aware of a Toronto Game Expo, you know. Because that's like Toronto's like super close to, relatively speaking. It's like an hour flight or something. It's like barely a trip for me to go to Toronto. So
if you're able to go, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's much easier than going to Berlin, which is going to be like 7 hours.
Oh,
I
geez.
might go to Amaze, but not this year.
Yes, no, I'm hoping that I can work my way into a sweetheart deal and get myself like a permanent accepted comped table or something at Amaze. Um, to just and also that like I make my money back there. I feel like Amaze is like my hotbed, of like where I'm going to just make out like a bandit. Because it feels like it's a bigger event, but also basically a bunch of people in my wheelhouse. People like
Yeah, I feel like Amaze feels like it is the exact audience for Indiepocalypse, and like most people who were in Indiepocalypse would love to be there if they could without
yeah
spending, flight tickets.
yeah no
I
somebody
also,
yeah go ahead.
yeah, it feels a little bit like you would be, I don't know, preaching to the choir. Like all of these people are already here.
Yes.
They're just not selling their games; they're exhibiting.
Right. So it's like can I get those people to buy things? When I go to like a MagFest or a PAX, I'm like infecting people's brains with the idea of weird indie games and like the like someone's like, oh, I like video games. Someone in a Mario t-shirt, I'm like, well, let me slide you onto these guys, and they're like, everybody needs that brain opening kind of like thing where it's like, oh, wait a minute, this can like the medium can be something different, and like you never know what it is for somebody. I was lucky as a teen who listened to a lot of classic rock and roll music to like the Clash, and then you like, oh, what's this fucking Sandinista album about? And it's like weird, reggaeton and all this nonsense of like music, and you like accidentally are breaking out of your own shell,
Mm.
And I think, I try to do that to some degree with like Indiepocalypse as well, and even like the contributors occasionally, like that's why I occasionally like to have a like a more standard game kind of in there. To someone who's like, oh, what are these other 9 games? And like they'll make someone who makes like a more like recognizable video game would be like, wait, what's this? And then they're like, what's this weird art bullshit? And then they might just make their own.
I think it's good to expose people to that kind of thing because so many people I feel like in like mass culture or whatever, they do just view video games as like a toy, right?
Yeah.
Or like, which is fine. Some games like kind of are that, but I think it is good to sort of put the notion out there because I feel like it's especially, I mean, in the console space, it's totally this way, but on PC, I feel like I don't know. It's cool that we've been able to cultivate kind of or that you've been able to cultivate kind of a culture that like is a little bit more open to like games that aren't exactly like, I don't want to say fun, but
right.
like there's a little more to games than just like sort of like kinetic like movement and like super enjoyable mechanics. Like,
yeah, I will gladly say games that are not fun. I love art that isn't fun.
Yeah, it's like fun is great, but there's like literally millions of other emotions that you can feel, after while enjoying something. So.
I've never despite the fact that I think about it constantly, I did not walk away. I did not walk away from the movie Stalker thinking that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What a fun movie that was, but it's super good, and I think about it, and I love it, and like art, like all art can be that, but games are still like, the credo of they gotta find the fun. It's like I'm taking the fun and I'm burying it in a ditch, and it's never going to be seen again.
Yeah, it's like I think we're still very much in like this like weird puberty for video games.
Yeah,
we're like we kind of have like a canon of like what works are super important and like what video games are and like what video game culture is, but it's still like enough of a hobbyist thing where like a lot of it's just like, not to put too fine of a point on it, but like it isn't the video game fans. Most of them don't think of it as art, despite engaging with it all the time. And
it's like it lacks the cohesive like secondary canon, to think back to Topsters, and music, because it has that kind of thing. It's easily explainable. It's like, sure, like video games will tell you plenty of fun, like the video game equivalent will tell you that like whatever Abbey Road is a good album or something,
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't the video game there isn't that same game canon. I mean, it's forming right now. That's like, hey, you know what else is a classic? Lift your skinny fist like antennas to heaven,
Yeah.
Like
the indie game canon. I mean, there kind of is with like I guess like Undertale and Minecraft and all that kind of stuff. But like the art house indie game canon is still
Right.
definitely like it feels like it's in the works. Like
Yeah.
I can definitely say like Hylix, Yume Nikki, Cruelty Squad. Like I'm sure there's even more.
Right.
But
maybe it's like maybe I'm forgetting an entry, but this is like was like Anthology of the Killer the first time the Catamites got like IGF recognition,
Yeah, exactly.
And according to this Wikipedia page that they have since 2009,
Yeah, exactly.
And that is like the game canon. It's like you'd be like, okay, well, where is the publisher digging up like old Cactus works, like like you go, oh no, what about like the 30 games he made before Hotline Miami?
Yeah, exactly. I think too a lot of times when people experience art or whatever, they do kind of assume that it's somebody's first attempt. Like
Yes.
especially people who haven't made games before. Like, oh my God! Like I think that like it's so much less intimidating because I always do this when I play a game that somebody's made to like look up their itch.io or whatever and then
Right.
see that like okay, this is really good, but they just spent 10 years like sort of honing this craft,
Yes, yeah. No,
I think that like humanizes it a lot more.
It feels like the perception of my first game, like, and it's just a hit. It's just like, no, that's the first game that is published and publicized, and I feel like I have to actively fight that anytime I talk to someone who's just starting out.
Yeah.
With like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like people look at Stardew Valley and go, oh, that's the normal first game experience, huh?
Yes.
And then they spend 2 years failing to make a game and being very upset about it and getting disappointed and then stopping. And the only way out of it is to just make stuff
Right.
and have it be small and shitty. And by your 20th game, it can maybe be Stardew Valley.
Yeah, exactly. I think too with like especially with Stardew Valley, it's like I'm pretty sure the guy like went to college for like computer science and like spent like 4 years on it too. So it's like it's so easy to look at like look on Steam and see it got released and then got super popular. But like the sort of I don't like the exposition of like how people actually get to the point where they can release something successful is normally like so much more complicated.
Right. And like it's also how do I say trying to like how do you put this politely? Stardew Valley is just fucking Story of Sea. Like there's nothing new in Stardew Valley really. Like it's just like it is the Harvest Moon that happened to take off in that moment,
Yeah, like he looked at Harvest Moon and like fixed it. You know what I mean? Like
you just like made a more like added a couple more like bells and whistles to a Harvest Moon. Knowing that Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons and all those have been like regularly published since since their inception, and it just happened to be like one of there's probably a mountain of farming farm life games that nobody thinks about, all coming out around the same time, and it's just
Survivorship bias.
Yeah, right. Look at that plane. It came back with all these red holes in it. It's the best plane.
Yeah. I was also gonna add earlier, but I was kind of like in and out and on mute a lot of the time. But I feel like solo dev as like a thing should stop existing, and we should hit people over the head when they say that a little bit. Just because every time I hear that, it's like, oh, I made this game solo. Oh, and nobody playtested it, and you didn't buy any assets, and you wrote the engine from scratch.
No, that's
You were
true.
not
That's
inspired by anything. You are the man that is an island.
Yeah, no. we were talking, I don't know if you caught that part, just like we were talking just influences alone are like a huge part of, that go into making a game that is like invisible, that like are also like an ultra important part of the process of having made that game. It is, right?
yeah,
Like,
100%.
it's such like but you want like the myth of like the the brilliant auteur or whatever, the mastermind who, and there are like clearly like, I think it's too easy to like dump one or the other, because it's obvious that like, yes, there are like individuals who have like a large creative voice in like large scale team projects exist, but I think if you asked any of them, a good number of them, I wouldn't say any, of course, a good number of them, they would not say that this is all their creative vision that they made themselves. you know, that's why they all have the same collaborators constantly. You know,
Yeah. I mean,
I
especially like bigger games and stuff, right?
right,
Like the second that you get any kind of budget, like, you know, I mean, with like Undertale or whatever, people think it's like Toby Fox, but at least, as far as my understanding goes, like, it wasn't just him who worked on it, right? But he's
right,
just kind of the one who got all the credit.
yeah. Right. There, I feel like I saw other people who had done like bits and pieces, and there was definitely more obvious in like Undertale 2, Deltarune.
Yeah.
I feel like that surfaced a lot more of like the other people that are working on Deltarune.
Yeah.
Maybe as part of like recognizing that, Toby Fox got too much solo attribution for Undertale.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that for him. Like, it's great for him. But like, I think it does people who are interested in making games or making art in general like a giant disservice to think that like everything always has to be just totally made from scratch. Like you have to
Right.
code your own engine in assembly or whatever.
Yes,
To
no.
be like a real.
That itself is a whole other. I'm trying to think of, there was a cursed phrase I came across recently, called the vision holder. That it was like, I think there's like a new phrase. I need to wish I could find it. Like a new phrase to look for like team lead, and like someone's going to talk on how to be a vision holder, and it's like, sounds like the most like entrepreneur startup like nonsense I've ever heard in my life. But
I feel like if you ever do like games contracting, you quickly realize that it's not the vision holder; it's the person who has the money to hire jesters that are willing to treat them like a director.
yes.
And if they're in a team of people who are willing to do their bidding because they like the idea, they usually don't call themselves the vision holder.
Yes, right. Right. I always keep a skeptic eye towards people who put themselves forward a lot, as like this like figurehead, and then you don't hear a lot about like the ephemera around them, whether they try to or not. I mean, part of that is also in how people talk about things. Sometimes to the people's best intentions, people focus on like the rock star of it all.
Yeah, it's. I feel like that's just like a big thing in culture, is just to like, for whatever reason, it's so easy for people to just like attach themselves to like one person who's involved with something they like, and just sort of like be like, okay, Notch is the Minecraft guy or whatever.
Right.
Like fuck, Notch. But like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Or like Toby Fox is the Undertale guy or whatever, and it's like, it's a very satisfying story to tell, but it's not exactly true. And this is something myself that like I feel like I need to get better at. Like I think collaboration in most cases does really improve can really improve a piece of art.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, who is the real successor to Zaum? Who's the Disco Elysium guy that made Disco Elysium Disco Elysium?
Right.
which of those companies has the real Disco Elysium guy? So, maybe.
Or is it just a combination of people that now broken apart will no longer exist? Is Mr. Disco Elysium now defunct and now dead?
Mr. Disco.
Yes.
They call it.
R.I.P. to Miss Elysium and the whole extended family.
A lot of games from different people. I started my first discoveries, and currently the radio show. You can join it. Yeah. The radio show. You can just call it. We're talking about the odd story.
I don't hear it.
Oh, yeah. You can hear voices over to the distance, over to the side.
Oh my God.
I was waiting for someone to hop on the call.
Yeah, I know.
It is. It's also a radio show.
Hi.
Hello. You're live on Indiepocalypse Radio. I'm Andrew, the host of that radio show I just told you about.
Hi, we're back.
Yes, welcome back.
So far, no long call-ins, but that's gone.
No, it's a random phone. I mean, I love the idea, but also just random con people jumping on a phone. It's like I would not expect anyone to do so unless they knew who I was.
Yeah.
But I do like that.
Famous Indiepocalypse Andrew.
Yes, world famous. I am I'm the guy from the meme in the corner.
They call him the pizza prankster.
Yes, it is a weird experience at conventions to be like having to reset. That's also part of like the benefit of like not being online. It's like because I would always have to like reset myself of like, oh, nobody knows what this is anymore. Like, but I'm famous online. They know who I am online.
I don't know what you look like, so IRL, I would not even recognize you.
Yeah, no, I have had people come up to me and ask, like, oh, are you Andrew? It's like the single person. Because in theory, I could have someone else watching the table for me. But no, and the thing is, I don't look at anything like my default avatar. My hair is longer now.
I feel like at this point, you could be like the gorillas, where you're just a concept online.
Yeah.
And IRL, there's like, Depocalypse Centers and 4 cons at the same time, actually.
I do like the idea of going around and being the kind of person who wears a mask to events, kind of like a truly mysterious public figure. But
I mean, we have enough of those in games, I feel.
Exactly.
Well, maybe not enough, but it's a gimmick that is like, yeah, okay, you're antisocial, but like, the commitment to the bit requires a certain amount of effort that I feel like isn't worth it a lot of the time.
Right. No, and that's similar. Like, I don't want, like, I'm also not that person who is like a big character who like, because in itself, it's kind of like also like a big, despite the fact that you're doing like a bit of anonymity, it is like a big character move, to be that guy who's like, oh yeah, there's my Daft Punk thing I'm doing. Although I do like Phantom of the Paradise as much as Daft Punk. I don't know. My one thing I have in common with them. But
you like what?
The film Phantom of the Paradise. I think anecdotally or apocryphally, I can't remember. Like they had met at a screening of Phantom of the Paradise in France and like bonded over it, and that is how Daft Punk was formed to some degree. Highly recommend. Also, highly recommend, of course, that movie to anyone who has not seen it. If you're into like a weird rock opera, it's freaking rules. But that said, we're approaching like 2 hours. We're over 2 hours of the show. It has been coasting by. My God. I'm going to start to wrap the show up a bit so that I can, continue on with my life and go eat and things like that.
Sounds good.
But do either of you have any pressing non-promotional things to get out before I start to wrap up the show?
No. Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head.
Perfect.
The non-promotional thing I want to get out there is you should find the people who do weird art in your city and talk to them.
Yes.
Figure out how and talk to them.
Or
having like an IRL community is so OP. It's hard to describe.
Yes. Yeah, it's like super. Even if it's like one time a month, there's like a benefit to like. Sometimes that one time a month visit can like outweigh like the other 29 days you spent talking to people online. Like there's just something to it.
Yeah. And like even if there is not an art community thing in your area, well, there's still probably people who do it.
Yeah.
You can just start one. And I'm going to say that the easiest thing to do is to just make a silly little poster and gather in the library once a month.
Yeah.
That's all it takes to start.
We were waiting for our table at a rest. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, security said something.
We were waiting for a table at a restaurant, and it was a long wait, so we just went to a bookstore and went to check it to see if they had what they had there. And this wasn't like a local. This was like a Barnes and Noble, and there was like a book club setting up when we were there, like. And it's like, oh yeah, you can just like set up in spaces, you can just
yeah.
And sometimes
continue.
I was gonna say sometimes you can co-op like stores, like local stores, and set up there, as to have like because then you also get like all the foot traffic to that store, of like helping you find people.
Yeah, and if it's especially not like a chain store,
yeah,
a lot of them are usually very much down to have like local arts represented there, and asking if they do consignment is usually a good idea, like at least over the phone.
Yes, no, I was mentioning that you had done exactly that earlier in the show.
Far, it's been successful in one place and not very successful in the other, and I feel like explaining what you're selling is also a big part of it.
Yes, yeah.
In like the signage.
Yeah, no, I'm going to attempt in 2 weeks from now, because right next to like the VFA that a zine fest I'm going to is like on the way home there is a retro game stop that I'm going to stop by with my briefcase and be like, hey, you want to stock some indie games?
Mm-hmm.
And see what people think.
I've had very different levels of success at different places. Usually good to call ahead because some of them say, oh, consignment? And you're here? Fuck yeah, let's do it. I'm going to put them on the shelf. I'm going to install a new shelf.
Right.
The one in Toronto that sells like very tiny budget indie movies and just old VHS tapes has Indiepocalypse like in the gum area at checkout. And other stores in Hamilton that I called were asking like consignment. Oh, you mean like old cartridges and like superhero figurines? Yeah, we can sell those online. And vibe checking them, I feel, is very important ahead of time.
Yes, that was like when I was looking around a lot of the stores around Providence. That kind of seemed like the vibe of their stuff was mostly like old like superhero comics and like collectibles kind of stuff. And it's about finding like the places that have like that are not like retro collecting stores that have like a cooler like indie vibe to them, which can be hard to find and sometimes not like the exact thing that you're looking for. It could be like a bookstore or like a video store or more like it's a cool place. But that all said, Ash, while you're on the line, promotional time. What have you got to people? I mean, obviously, if you're at the Toronto Games Expo, stop by, pick up some tapes in person. But do you have anything else you want to direct people towards?
Other than that, 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say while at the expo, there's also the company that I work at exhibiting, and just a lot of cool people around. I'm yet to explore it all.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I that's the one thing I regret is I never have time to like actually check out events at all because I have to work them all day.
Hmm. I'm gonna try to do that maybe tomorrow because I feel like today I've dilly dallied enough on this call.
Yes. You've popped in for like an hour long just radio show call in.
Yeah. Also from the Toronto Game Expo, I don't know if that's gonna still be a thing tomorrow. I'm stealing home 8 Mario Kart dinners because they just were giving them away, and there was no limit per person.
Oh, sorry, I missed. What was that? What were you taking?
I'm stealing 8 Mario Kart dinners.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Snatch a bunch of them.
It's free food.
I always
Not good food.
No. I mean, speaking of Toronto Limited non-good food, I always think about a friend of a mutual Toronto acquaintance, Lentillion, had mentioned like at some point they pointed out like I think posted online like a Garfield each face mask as like a extremely specific moment in time. I think about the Garfield each COVID mask like all the time.
Yeah, that guy has moved on to worse things now.
Oh yeah, I don't think I don't think there were good intentions behind Garfield Eats to begin with.
It's just
the Garfield chinos were unethical.
Just a guy who's a critter, you know.
Yeah.
Those happen sometimes.
The worst guy you know makes a funny idea. You know, it happens sometimes.
Many such cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 second.
Yes. Oh,
you want some Garfield Eats interesting lore? in a second.
Yeah.
Well, fine. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I didn't know which one you were talking to. Yes.
I was talking to my friend who I'm tabling with whom I made a dress-up game recently.
Okay. Am I getting the Garfield Eats lore, or am I dispensing it?
You're gonna receive some.
Okay. Yes, I am an eager recipient to this.
Okay. In the meantime, anything else you would like to plug? Garfield Eats lore.
Okay, Garfield Eats lore. So the guy, Nathan Masry, well, I did meet him. He's actually very normal in person, but he was telling me about how he feels like he has a woman inside of him and he's Two-Spirit. And then I was like, Nathan, you can't call yourself Two-Spirit. But anyway, then I gave him a pink Silly Band because it was the Barbie movie premiere. And he was like, see, I can wear this because I'm like a woman or whatever. And then, and then I got him to record like a video message from my Telegram chat with my friends. And I was like, see, they're non-binary too. And then he thought I meant like a group, like a therapy group for non-binary people.
Yeah. And
he was like, I need in on that. But now he's a PPC candidate and he's posting weird conservative shit. So I don't know. He's also bisexual is the other crazy thing. But he did pretend to be homophobic once for attention so that he could get more clicks on his celibacy coming out video. Yeah, it was. There's a lot of stuff about him. I could say he's a very strange man. But you can watch the Garfield Eats reality TV show. It is on YouTube, and you can see how much of a weird man he is. Also, sorry, I can't really hear anything.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That was crucial information for me. I will. I will. I didn't. Oh my god! I'm looking at this freaking this thumbnail of Garfield Eats Farewell,
It's
and it
okay.
looks like the Garfield he has in the back looks like Lasagna Cat.
Yeah.
It's like it's the exact kind of like the face. Maybe it is the same costume. It just reminds me a lot of the Lasagna Cat costume they have. And so, which is
Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
he did have like the orange suit, if that's what you mean. Sorry,
Yes.
I can't like superhero very well.
No. I'm looking at YouTube thumbnails of Garfield Eats Farewell, and he does have the big suit, and it does look like.
Oh yeah, he did sell the costume and his suit, and a lot of Garfield things, but they were too expensive. Otherwise, I would have bought them.
Yeah. What a weird.
If you go on his Instagram and like scroll all the way back, he has these really weird posts which are like zoomed in images of his face, where he talks about how it's time for the beige race. It's really weird. He also has a lot of weird COVID posts. If you scroll back to 2020, when he was promoting the Garfield face mask.
Yeah.
Just his Instagram, his Twitter too. He was like posting about how Big Bird doesn't need a vaccine because he's a cartoon, and he has Moderna. I don't know. He's really weird. There's so much you could see on his social media if you scroll.
I'm going to take it all secondhand because I'm worried now that if I spend too much time on his NathanRosby.com, of course, and start looking at his Scooby-Doo Eats hot dogs or whatever he's holding.
Scooby-Doo Eats flopped badly.
Yes, but it's still
got the brown suit and everything, but it still flopped.
It is that is his main image on the website still, front and center.
Yeah, he kind of flops at everything, honestly. Besides being a weird freak online, he's really good at that.
God, how do I get to have a lot of money and flop all the time?
Yeah, his dad owns like a juice chain, I think, or something, like a juice restaurant chain in Dubai, something like that. So he does have some sort of like nepo baby situation going.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this year as like, how do I become a nepo baby? I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, juice chain seems to be the way. Maybe.
Yeah, I need some mogul to adopt me so I can be a nepo baby.
Yeah.
But well, thank you so much for this crucial Garfield Eats Lord.
No problem.
Do you have anything to promote while you're here? Anything you want people to check out?
My Instagram is Toad Type, like Toad like a frog and type like on a keyboard.
Yes.
That's about it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No, thank you for dropping by. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
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 That just addicted me to the idea of call-in shows.
No, that was funny.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, I'm back.
Hello. You've infected me with the curse of a call-in show, and like how much I actually think call-in shows are fun. I love them. And like, how can I turn Indiepocalypse routinely into a call-in show? Let me
like make this a recurring segment.
Yeah, like, but also like I like the jankiness of like a clearly like not good quality. You know, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, just get a shitty mic.
Yeah, I need someone to be like, okay, if you're gonna be in the call-in segment, you need to call in with the shittiest mic you have.
You're not allowed to sound better than the host.
Right. You need to sound like shit and like you have a terrible connection.
Well, I am calling from data, so that may be as a little.
Oh no! I mean, when I say that with like the highest compliment, I say you sound like shit. Like, I would not have it any other way. It's beautiful.
I know.
It's like
also the phone receiver adds a little to the quality.
Yeah. No, it's like the fact that you sometimes you have like stretches where you can't understand every third word is like the beauty of radio. I already.
You have to imagine some of it.
Right. This is already video, like not video only, like audio only, because for one, I don't want to have people have to get ready for it, and two, like, you know, theater of the mind, and also I guess I got a 3 as well. Fuck, I said I forgot what it was, but whatever. There's a charm, I think, to just like, oh, you know what it is? I hate people having to be camera ready and like they're kind of like smiling when you're not being talked to. The whole fucking like, let's turn every interaction to a panel show or whatever is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels a little more cozy. A little more like chatting on the phone with the girlies,
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, I'm just here to hang out. This is like, I don't work on the weekends, and this show is part of me not working on the weekends. Like, I'm going to edit out that one song that I played, and then that's the editing that I do on this show, is editing out the music. And then, posting it. I usually do on Saturday or Sunday, but that's like takes like 2 seconds to post. I usually just fire up but anyway, this is why I start at the 2-hour mark, because you never know when you're just going to start rambling about something else, or someone's going to hit you with some hard-hitting Garfield Each facts, fuck, dude, you know what? There would be no way to enforce this, but I would if I would want a call-in show where people could. Aspirationally, the only reason I would want to become a personality is so I could throw my weight around, and like I would love to do Indiepocalypse radio at like conventions,
Mm-hmm.
Because I would. I mean, for one, I'm just excited about the idea of like scouring and like looking for local bands to hire to play it, to do the intro and the interstitial music. Because I think there's like, damn, dude, I just want to find some local bands and have them like play cool music and like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also, then I'm like, also, if I could do a call-in portion of that, and I could get one of those freaking Garfield phones. I love those Garfield phones so much. I'm surprised I don't have one, only because it just seems like decadent, but they're. I love them. But that all said, getting into the proper wrap up mode, 15 minutes later, people looking for your work, where can they find it?
I would just say go to findeevy.com. It's just findeevy.com.
Yeah.
And then generally the stuff I do is on there. And who knows, maybe within the next year something will come out. Something new will appear on that website.
Right. But you got things coming out there. You got all your links. You got these. You can buy physical copies of this.
I wonder where you can do that at.
Yeah. At this let me see this website. I know this website. I made this website. You have like you have an early, like, your photos. You can see, like, it's fun looking at Aleph and Coda side by side, because Coda was like one of the first ones. So you get like, okay. I was like, why did Aleph is different because your back is vertically oriented. I was gonna say you can see Coda, which is like, how do I do this? And now I have like the, my my stock 3-tiered photo, of like what Indiepocalypse photos look like, which is like, man, they look cool. I mean these things are cool. Yeah, so
sick.
You buy those. You buy Indiepocalypse 43 or Indiepocalypse 8, 7. Ash, do you remember your Indiepocalypse off the top of your head? Ash has left or is busy.
No.
I think it is somewhere around the 6, 7, 8 period is where where it is. Let me see. Oh, I think it is 8. Yes. Techstream 2 is an 8. Yeah, so you buy those issues 43 or... that's... Yeah. I jumped ahead of my things. Of course, you can find my work at indiepocalypse.com or pizzaprinks.io. If you buy issues 43 and 6, for instance, or 8, these nice guests here will eventually get that vaunted, that long sought after Indiepocalypse $5 to $6 through PayPal, which can turn into anywhere from $4 to $600 depending on your local currency exchange rate. Oh, that was the thing I was going to mention earlier. That was like, what's the thing I forgot to say is like my 2025 slogan for Indiepocalypse. It may not be the best paying, but it's the fastest paying game in town. You don't have to chase me around for royalties. Sometimes if you're lucky, if you're filling out that form at the right time, and I just happen to be on that computer, sometimes you'll get a payment like 3 minutes after you fill out your form.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, if I'm like, oh look, it's like I'm already adding one. Like, oh, another one came down. Let me just put that one in there, and like that money's flying off the shelf. I want exclusively what I want to do is like help promote people, and all my money I spend on not food and survival is basically spent on art. During the show, Automaton, what was Automaton? Not Automaton Long. The new. They had a Kickstarter for. I just backed it. Like I backed both a comic and I'm trying. Of course, I can think of Automaton Long because that is the other one. But what was it? Automaton Heart. Contributor, friend of the show, Luke Vincent. That that's what I'm doing during this thing. Is I'm doing things like backing projects. Just all money basically goes to art in my life.
That's not a bad thing.
No. All I do is
That's sick.
I've got a pile of comics that came in. My 2 shipments that came in today were USB sticks and a pile of comics I have from Paradise Systems. Weirdly, I opened up to. I have an anthology game, and I opened up to a Toyoyo Lee, past cover artist, Toyoyo Lee. I opened up to his segment, very distinct, because it's not. It does not work in games, but does a very distinct pixel art style.
Cool.
Like, it's very far away in the carousel, but issue 46, a Paradise System, shout out to Paradise, which is like they do a lot of indie Chinese comic publishing stuff and localization. Yeah, I like comics a lot, and I love indie comics. Like, I know someone who went was taking a trip to Japan. I said, like, buy me weird indie comics. Go to Taco Che and get me a bunch of weird shit. And I was looking. It was weird to look at the site and go, oh, actually, I do actually have some of the stuff already. I'm like, but do not get me that one because I do actually already have that. But yeah, that is that. Indiepocalypse.com/Patreon, of course. If you want to subscribe, it's also a way that's a standard subscription that costs the cost of the zine, but also there's a $5 option if you want to get just those brand new commissioned games. You can do that for a mere $5 a month for I think it's like a discount. So I think it's like $50 a year for 12, months of just just people making cool ass games. Like, it's wild. Like, how many people are just make I've been meaning. So the most recent.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. My name's Madeline. I just bought stuff.
Sorry. Hello.
Cool.
I'm here.
on situation.
You're cutting in and out. Sorry. Who is this?
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah. I bought things really cool.
Oh, Oh, thank you. This
Okay,
is.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
So you're kind of. No problem. Thank you. I'm gonna pass the phone back now.
Absolutely, thank you. Have a good one. But there's yeah, no, I could talk forever about these things. I am eager because I mean part of the downside is like of being busy is sometimes like the commission games I don't I don't get a chance to like play them right away because I'm not playing them for submission. So
Yeah.
but I am super enthralled about Zix Youngson Flesh Dynamics, which is the newest one, and it's like because it's like also I love when people post mortems because it was like based on his experience of like playing games in English. It's a South Korean developer, and not knowing the language and like trying to parse the game. Like to parse the symbols and everything. So it's like the intro is like super cool because it's got like it's like English, Korean, and then like this third language. And when you want to go pick one, it kind of glitches out and goes to this third constructed language.
Oh, that's sick.
So it's kind of like made to like replicate the experience of like, and I had this experience too as like downloading like ROMs for like Japanese games, and I cannot read Japanese, and like
Yeah.
and it's a game designed of the idea of you're playing meant to evoke the feeling of playing through a foreign game you don't know the language of.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like the cool weird stuff. Like I give people like the commissioned devs just have like 100% creative freedom, just like do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, here's some cash. Just make whatever weird game you want to make, or whatever. Dust off an old project, finish an old idea, like whatever you're working on. Like my only real restriction is that it's like it's got to be here first and exclusive for like a month. Otherwise, like if like in theory, so I reached out to commission someone and they were like 30 seconds away from publishing a game on itch, and they go, huh. And then they just save that game for Indiepocalypse. That works for me too.
Yeah.
But they're just like we talked about a lot on this show. The scope of potential of games is really wide, and like the commercial market represents, I would say generously, 1% of the potential of games as a medium.
Yeah.
And so I like the more that people I just like games. It's the weird thing about selling Indiepocalypse is just kind of like talking about things that I like,
Yeah, I mean that's a plus side, right?
Yeah, so it's the hard thing of like wanting to talk about these things I like, but not feel like I'm selling them, even though that technically is sort of what I'm doing. But really, I just like this stuff a lot. Anyhow,
yeah.
I'm gonna fully wrap up the show now. This is the end of the show. Finn, Ash, thank you both for joining me here today. Glad it was a pleasure, fun. I'm glad the call-in show worked, as much as well as it did, which was very well. And I do love the idea of this, just the aesthetics of buying a phone receiver to plug into your cell phone. It's just the beautiful aesthetics of it. I'm bringing that weirdo indie vibe all over the world. Huge fan.
Amen.
Yeah, because like I said, we had a random person 30 seconds ago call in, jump on the phone and say they thought it was cool and they bought it, and they probably did not know what it was, 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And so,
sick.
Like, people are into weird stuff, and I think you need to like engage with the weird stuff. That's the thing I think about a lot. I think whenever I see like every 3 months or whatever, some post to go viral about being like, oh, you should make art for sickos, be the sicko making sicko art or whatever. And then they'll like never name a piece of art like that or whatever. Or they'll name or people's standards for that, or like the last one of them I saw, it was something to the effect of like, oh, they should give little freaks money to make weird little games, and I was looking at like the quote post, and it was like the most middle of the road big budget, like, listen, I'm sure Baldur's Gate 3 is fine, but it's not like, I would never call that as a weird little thing made by weird little freaks, you know. It's like,
No, I don't think it deserves that title.
It's
I mean,
like-
I'm
it's
sure
like-
it's good, but
it's like a big budget computer RPG made in the legacy of computer RPGs, you know.
yeah.
It's like you got to you can get further from the world of, it's like it's pretty far from the world of alternative art, you know.
Yeah.
But that's it. I thought to not belabor the show and have it go on forever. I already said my goodbye, so I'm gonna say a final one. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. I appreciate you having me. It was nice
Yeah.
talking to y'all.
Absolutely. See ya.